Mom was at a spa when doctor called, "Your son is dying." She sighed. "If he dies, call back." 9 days later, I opened my eyes and saw who chose me. I was 17 when I left a family gathering, figuring the worst thing I'd bring home was a damaged heart. Then a storm swept across the highway, and a semi turned my automobile into scrap metal. In the trauma bay, the doctor informed me that I had minutes, not hours, and that they required my mother's permission to cut me open and save my life. So, a nurse connected her to FaceTime. My mother replied from a spa, with my younger sister sitting by her, and she didn't even stand up. She simply sighed and added, "If it dies, let me know. I don't have time for paperwork." So I went under. 19 days later, I awoke with a tube in my throat, metal in my mouth, and 2 lines on a chart at the end of my bed that made no sense. A new legal guardian was appointed, and the name on the document was not hers. It's a story about someone who saved me when I was about to be erased. My name is Cole Mercer. And now I will tell you everything. People believe that kids who grow up in Montecito do not bleed the same way. Big residences, private schools, and an automobile at 17. But no one ever asks what it's like to eat dinner with people who talk about you as if you don't exist. I was 17 when I noticed I wasn't in the family photo anymore. Not metaphorically, literally. My name is Cole Mercer, and this is where it all started. We were sitting at the dinner table in a mansion that looked like it belonged in a luxury home magazine, polished floors and crystal glasses. Richard sat at the head of the table, my mother Helena opposite from him, and Avery on my right, browsing through her phone and filming everything for her Instagram stories. I sat at the end, in an unoccupied corner spot, like a prop someone had forgotten to remove. We were eating salmon, which is my least favorite, and it was precisely arranged, as if it had to pass a picture exam before reaching my lips. Helena discussed her planned spa weekend in OG, as well as a charity auction she was planning to benefit coastal cleanup. Richard interrupted about his latest architecture project, an Eolux villa in Big Sur. Avery chuckled, pulling her hair and giggling about how one of her postings received 14K likes in an hour. Nobody asked me anything. I was not a part of the conversation. I was a placeholder in a family portrait. Then it struck harder. Helena took a call on speaker. It was another parent from Avery's school. "Oh," she said in that phony kind tone she always used when she needed something from someone. "Richard and I are doing wonderfully. Avery is prospering. And the older one is still around." She didn't utter my name once. The older one. She treated me as if I were a phase she had not yet outgrown. After supper, I went to my room, which was not upstairs like Avery's with an ocean view, but rather in the wing near the laundry room and the utility closet. When we moved in, they said it was only temporary. It had been more than a year. I went looking for an old charger and ended up opening a storage cabinet, where I discovered a shoebox full of family photos. But I wasn't in them. Photo after photo. Helena wears heels on a vineyard tour. Richard smiled beside her. Avery wore outfits with balloons and cakes, as well as matching parent and daughter spa robes. There was one of me cropped awkwardly at the edge of a Thanksgiving photo, with barely half of my face visible. Another one is titled Family Vacation. Maui did not have me at all. There was also a manila packet labeled Confidential Health Insurance. It has my name on it. I did not open it. I'm not sure why. Maybe because I knew I wouldn't like what I found. At school, everyone assumed I was all right. Montecito children do not receive sympathy. If you live behind a gate, people assume you have your life under control. However, the gate only served to polish the anguish. Avery would go past me in the hallway as if we were not connected. Her pals murmured about the OG vacation and the spa retreat she and Helena had planned. She explained, "It's simply a girls' weekend. Mom feels it's vital to disengage. No calls, no drama." I was never part of the plan. Ventura was the only location where I could breathe. Every few weekends, I'd go down to see my grandfather, Gage Pierce, a retired sheriff and part-time fisherman who was the only man to ever look me in the eye and say, "Are you okay?" His house smelled like salt and coffee grounds. It wasn't much, yet it seemed personal. We did not discuss feelings. He offered me a Gatorade, pointed to the toolbox, and showed me how to mend a flat. That was his way of expressing he noticed me. "Are you going to the Easter fish fry?" he inquired, passing me a flyer with a wink. "Yeah," I replied, attempting to sound nonchalant. "I'll be there early to help out." Helena texted me on the way back. "Don't make this week too complicated for me." "I'm busy," she said, without asking if I was okay. She never did. I glanced at the message, a peculiar chill settling over my chest. Easter was approaching, and something in my gut told me it wouldn't be just ham and pastel decor this year. Something was being set in action, and I was not going to like where it led. The air in the house changed around a week before Easter. It was not dramatic. It was calm and controlled, like if everyone knew something I didn't, and they were rehearsing lines for a show to which I wasn't invited. I arrived home one afternoon and entered through the side entrance. Helena and Richard were in the kitchen. They did not hear me at first. Richard was pouring something into the glass. Helena stood beside the window, her phone facing down on the counter. I talked to Dr. Thomas, Richard stated. He recommends boarding. Helena groaned. Structured programs are more effective at behavioral stabilization. All I want is for it to be handled properly before Easter. No scenes. There is still paperwork. We will get it done. I've already spoken with Ridgeview. I froze. My rucksack swung loosely over one shoulder, my heart skipping like a skipped beat. Boarding. Behavioral paperwork. Before Easter. They intended to send me away. And soon. That night, I waited until everyone went upstairs. I crept inside Richard's office, pretending to fetch my charger, but really went directly to the cabinet containing crucial files. It was cracked open and messy. There was a folder labeled Household Assets plus Insurance. I flipped through it too quickly, my fingers shaking. Helena, Richard, and Avery. Their names appeared on all primary beneficiary lines. My name was not missing, yet it was not among theirs. It was placed in the back, labeled Prior Dependent, with the comment Transition Plan Pending. I took a picture of the page with my phone and closed the folder before my stomach turned even more. The next morning, Helena drove me to school. It was just me and her in the car. The silence was audible. Easter's important this year. She added abruptly. A large number of people will be there. I need things to go smoothly. I didn't say anything. There is a fresh opportunity for you. I know. After Easter, a change in environment, structure, and support. Do you mean you are going to ship me off? I said, watching her expression. Her smile wavered for a fleeting second. You're always assuming the worst. I'm trying to help. No, you're trying to make me disappear. She didn't respond. She simply cranked up the music and like the conversation had not occurred. That weekend, I drove to Ventura. I wanted to tell Gage everything, but the words stuck. I didn't want to sound crazy. I did not want him to worry. Are you okay? He inquired, bringing me a bottle of water as usual. I paused. Just school stuff. He didn't press, but nodded and added, if you ever need real help, call this guy. He then handed me a card. Daniel Pierce, a juvenile law specialist. I pocketed it and told a joke, but it didn't feel humorous. Back in Montecito, I strolled by Helena's living room and noticed her iPad vibrating with notifications. One of them attracted my attention. OG Valley Inn Spa confirmed. Full day mother-daughter reset. Non-refundable. It should be noted that no calls will be made during the session. It was slated on Easter Sunday. My heart thumped. That cannot be a coincidence. If something happened and I needed aid, there would be no one to turn to. They'd planned it. The night before Easter, I was preparing a bag for my stay at Gage's when Avery knocked. She didn't enter, simply leaned against the door frame with her arms folded. Just so you know, she stated, after tomorrow, everything gets easier for all of us. What the hell does that mean? She smirked. It indicates you are no longer a part of this family. And, frankly, you never were. Then she walked away as if she hadn't just lighted a match and dumped it everywhere. I stood there, staring at the photograph in the corridor. Helena, Richard, and Avery smile in front of a Christmas tree. My frame was shattered and missing from the shelf below. Tomorrow was Easter, and I had no idea that the crash was already happening. I arrived in Ventura just before noon, which was earlier than necessary. The backyard still smelled of sea salt and old charcoal from last summer, and Gage was already out there, dragging folding chairs from the shed. I helped him set up the huge table and string the lights, pretending it was just another picnic or Easter. Here, he continued, handing me a perfectly folded light blue shirt. Wear it today. Looks great on you. It wasn't new. Not precisely. It was one of my real dad's old shirts, which Gage had washed, pressed, and stored. I ran my fingertips across the collar, unsure what to say. Thanks, I said quietly, and he simply nodded, as he often did when he provided something that meant more than he let on. By 2:30, the backyard was crowded. Cousins, uncles, and aunts I didn't know well, but who nonetheless hugged me and asked too many questions. There were deviled eggs and corn on the cob. Someone brought tri-tip from that location off the 34. It felt quite safe. For once, I wasn't just background noise. Then came a perfect storm. Helena arrived as if she were being photographed. The white dress is flawless, with not a single wrinkle. Richard parked his Tesla right by the curb as if he owned the block. Avery was the last to leave, recording on her phone while spinning in the sunlight. They did not bring a dish or drinks. Instead, they brought presents. That was sufficient for them. Helena air-kissed an aunt she hadn't seen since Christmas, and gave a loud remark on the centerpieces. Richard began talking business with one of my cousins as if he had practiced the presentation. Avery just continued filming. I approached Helena to say hello, and she turned to a family friend. This is Cole, she announced. Not my son, just the name. She grinned and turned away before I could answer. I backed away, got a bottle of water, and moved to the side of the house. I needed a minute. That was when I heard her. Helena's voice was gentle but clear. Yes, just confirming tomorrow's full day. Yes, only the two of us. No interruptions, no phone calls, and no paperwork. Today is our detox day. She chuckled with a smooth, delighted sound. It has been a long time coming. Only mother and daughter. Really quiet. I froze. Avery's voice rang out from behind her. Finally. No boys, no drama, just us. My stomach sank. It was not the words, it was how casually they uttered them. How quickly I had been eliminated from their definition of family. I'm not sure how long I stood there before walking back out into the yard. Gage caught me midway across the grass. You okay? I nodded too quickly. Just a headache. He didn't believe me, but he didn't insist. I fell back into my chair and attempted to eat something, but everything tasted like cardboard. Later, one of my mother's cousins drew me aside near the grill. She was sipping iced tea and making small chat when she stated this. So, I heard you're doing something new after this. Your mother mentioned that there is a planned program. I stared at her. What type of program? She shrugged. Something structured. Good for concentration and discipline. She made it sound like an excellent opportunity. I walked away before saying anything I'd regret. By sundown, I'd had enough. The warmth was gone. The Ventura air did not feel safe anymore. It simply felt like the final item I was permitted to have. I told Gage I was leaving early. Are you sure? He asked. Yeah, just tired. He handed me the keys to the ancient Civic that I had saved up for. Drive safely. If the rain moves in, the roads will get slick. Text me when you get home. I nodded. I will. Avery passed me near the gate. All lip gloss and smugness. She leaned in just enough to say, Mom will be busy all day tomorrow. Whatever happens, don't call. I glanced at her in surprise, but she didn't stop. Just kept walking as if it was nothing. I slipped inside the car and turned the key. The fragrance of barbecue lingered on my clothes. I didn't turn back as I drove away, but the wind had picked up and the sky was changing. As I approached the freeway, I kept thinking about Gage's voice. Please text me when you get home, and do not call Avery. 2 separate orders. One meant protection, while the other meant erasure. And I still hadn't chosen who I would listen to. The rain fell faster than I thought. When I passed the second exit out of Ventura, the windshield was a whirl of water and headlights. The wipers were set to full speed, but they were unable to keep up. Everything appeared smudged, as if I were driving through a painting that had been sobbed on. I looked at my phone on the console. I typed a quick message to Gage before heading back. It's all good. Then I stared at it. What if he calls? What if he overheard something in my voice? I deleted the message and put the phone in the glove box. I did not want him to worry. I did not want him to stop me. I told myself to get home. Sleep it off. Act as if today did not happen. The road curved across a low area, with water collecting in the dips. I slowed down. I was not being reckless. I recognized Gage's voice. If it's raining, drive slowly. I checked the speedometer just below the limit. That's when the headlights appeared in my rearview mirror. Bright, and too close. A black SUV hugged my bumper. Their bright beams flickered once, twice, as if they wanted me to accelerate, but I did not. The SUV did not pass. It sat there, inching closer, its headlights bouncing inside my car like searchlights. I held the wheel tighter, my heart pounding in my ears. Then I saw it. A decal on their windshield. Something resembling a school crest or private club. My stomach sank. It appeared familiar. One of the places Avery would always post from. Her buddies had gone to a club. I did not have time to think about it. Up ahead, a semi-truck in the opposite lane hydroplaned. I watched it start to fishtail, slow at first, then fast, way too fast. The trailer slid across the line like a knife. I swerved. Everything turned white. Then sound blasted. Metal, glass, and something tearing. I felt the seatbelt buckle across my chest. The world swirled. My arms became numb. My head broke. Something hard. Then came silence. Then there was some more noise. Sirens. Someone yelled. A bright light shines above me. A voice says, "Kid, can you hear me? Stay with us." I was speechless. I tried. Nothing came out. My entire body felt as if it were wrapped in wet cement. Hands yanked at my jacket. Someone was checking my pockets. My wallet lay on the floor, open. My student ID and a folded business card, which Gage gave me. I saw a paramedic pick it up, look at it, and stuff it into my coat pocket as if it didn't matter. But it did. They strapped me to a board and lifted me into the back of the ambulance. I could hear them speaking. Someone muttered, "Name is Cole Mercer." "There is no paperwork," Reynolds says. "What?" "That is not what he said. That is what's in the system." Muffled voices. Then one of them is flagged as insurance. "We need to check eligibility." Then a pause. "We do not have authorization. Family contact." Another pause. "Mother is unavailable. No calls are permitted during spa treatments. Listed under do not disturb. There are no other guardians listed." "No." I tried to move and speak. Nothing. The sirens became louder, and the lights harsher. I could hear the doctor as the doors swung open. "Bring him in now. We are losing window time." I wanted to scream. I wanted to know I wasn't alone, that someone was waiting for me, and that I was important to someone, but all I could think about was the message I hadn't sent. "I'm heading back. It's all good." It would have been a lie, but he'd know I tried. I do not remember being wheeled in. I can't remember the white light, or the metallic clatter of gurney wheels on tile. What I remember is pain blooming inside me like a living thing, clawing its way up from my gut to my ribs before fading away. Later, they informed me that there was internal bleeding, a ruptured spleen, possible cerebral edema, contusions, broken ribs, and a shattered collarbone. It sounded like a list someone might recite in court. Not injuries, but evidence. What I didn't know, and no one else knew, was how much of the next 90 minutes would be spent on a FaceTime call. The surgeon required a signature. I was 17, unconscious, and legally a minor, and Helena Reynolds was listed as my guardian in the hospital records. A nurse named Jessie dug into the system. She frowned as she scrolled through the contact files, her eyes catching something odd. "That's strange," she commented quietly to a colleague. "There is no secondary emergency contact on file. It's just her. No grandfather, no extended family." Another nurse assisted her in digging deeper into the records. Gage Pierce was listed among other contacts who had not been flagged for emergency communication, buried beneath layers of form fields and quiet editing. The implication was clear: someone had gone in and rearranged the priorities. The one man who would have given everything to save me had been pushed to the bottom of the list. They had no choice. They dialed the number listed for Helena. The screen shone with golden light and soft music. It looked like a commercial. Helena was reclining on a plush spa bed, wearing a white robe, her head wrapped in a towel, and a half-applied facial mask on her skin. Avery was next to her, grinning as if it was the best day of her life, phone in hand and already mid-selfie. "Mrs. Reynolds," the surgeon stated calmly, "your son is in critical condition as a result of a vehicle collision. He has internal bleeding and possible brain trauma. We need emergency authorization to proceed with surgery." Helena blinked slowly. "Wait. Ouette." The nurse clarified. She didn't even sit up, instead waving one manicured hand. "If it dies, please let me know. I don't have time for paperwork." I wish that line was fiction. It was not. Avery snorted, held up her phone, and took a photo of the FaceTime screen. "I'm unconscious, blood on my face, and tubes down my throat." She giggled as if she had won a bet. The nurse's hand froze and trembled as she lowered the device. A third nurse in the background muttered, "Save the call log. Record everything." Another doctor came into view and tried again. "Mrs. Reynolds, you understand that this is a legal matter. He is a minor." Helena sighed, annoyed. "Okay, call his grandfather, Gage Pierce. He will sign whatever. I'm done here." Then she ended the call. That's when things moved fast. The ER team located Gage's name in the extended contact list and dialed. He picked up on the third ring. He didn't ask for details. He didn't ask what happened. The second he heard my name and the word critical, he was gone. Out the door. Through the storm. Keys in hand. He arrived at the hospital drenched from head to toe, shoulders squared like he was walking back into a war zone. "I'm Gage Pierce," he told the front desk. "Where is he?" They took him straight to ICU. In a side hallway, they handed him the forms. Consent for surgery, emergency decision-making authority, financial responsibility, should it come to that. He didn't hesitate. Signed every page. Fast, neat, decisive. When he entered the prep room, I was already halfway sedated. Still, they gave him 45 seconds. He stepped to the edge of the bed, took my hand, and whispered, "I'm here, kid, I've got you. You're not alone." Then the doors closed behind him, and I disappeared into the bright silence of the O. What no one knew, not the doctors, not even Gage, was that while they were working to keep me alive, Richard Reynolds was already on the phone, not to check on me, but to his financial advisor. He wanted a note on the insurance file. No financial liability from his side. All medical authorization would fall to Helena. No media contact, no signatures, no paper trail. Let Helena carry the mess. Let the kids survive or not. Just keep my name out of it. That's how they moved. As if I was a headline waiting to happen. Not a boy, not her son, just a problem being handled. By the time the surgery began, the hospital was already updating my chart. An internal note flagged by the risk management team stated current guardian declined life-saving intervention. Alternative party signed under emergency clause. And deep inside the system, a new line was added. Under legal guardian, the cursor blinked, and then typed Gage Pierce. The ICU was too quiet. Monitors beeped. Machines hissed and clicked, but everything felt muffled, like sound was being filtered through water. Gage never left. He sat in the hard chair beside my bed, jacket slung over the armrest, one hand always resting on my arm. If a nurse so much as glanced toward my chart, he was already asking questions. What's his oxygen saturation? Why did the heart rate spike just now? He wasn't just my grandfather anymore. He was my line of defense. By the third day, he'd already requested printed copies of every record the hospital had on my file, especially the FaceTime call. He'd worked homicide before retiring. He knew how systems buried things, and he knew how to make sure nothing got erased. He had them burn the audio to a thumb drive, had the call log notarized. A risk management rep from the hospital met with him that afternoon. There's sufficient evidence, she said carefully, to categorize this as medical neglect. The fact that the legal guardian declined urgent intervention for a minor puts us in mandatory report territory. She paused, then added, "We'd like to know if you want to proceed with an emergency transfer of guardianship while the patient is still unconscious, for his safety." Gage didn't even blink. Yes. By that evening, Daniel Pierce was standing in the ICU hallway, a stack of documents under his arm, tie loosened, but eyes sharp. He reviewed everything. The call transcript, the nurse statements, the image of Avery's smirking face over my broken body. "This won't stay quiet," he said. He wasn't wrong. By morning, a staff member told Gage that a version of Avery's screenshot had already made its way through group chats at her school. Students were sharing it in whispers, captioned with things like, "Guess he finally crashed." Daniel didn't just see a bad joke. He saw a gift. "This is actionable," he said. "Defamation, emotional abuse, targeted harassment. It helps build the case that Montecito was not a safe environment, especially with a minor involved." Gage nodded. "Do whatever you need." The next day, Daniel got a call, not from Helena, not from Richard, but from a law firm that smelled suspiciously like PR. They weren't asking for forgiveness. They were offering silence. "Settle this quietly," the man on the phone said. "Let's not make this messier than it already is." Daniel smiled like a wolf. "Put that in writing." By that afternoon, he was standing at the front gate of the Reynolds estate in Montecito with a court officer and an envelope. Emergency guardianship petition, formal complaint, notice of pending medical expenses. The door opened. Helena stood in a white sweater dress, face tight. "You can't be serious," she said. "I am," Daniel said. "Have a good evening." Behind her, Avery burst into tears. "She's saying, I posted it by accident." Gage later told the nurse, "Now it's my fault for being in the hospital." The court fast-tracked the hearing. Children, medical negligence, social fallout, even the system couldn't ignore that. By day's end, Daniel had everything lined up. Witnesses, call logs, my new medical chart with Gage listed in bold at the top as primary decision maker. I was still unconscious when the change was entered officially. Somewhere across town, Helena sat in her curated living room, staring at the court order that proved she'd lost something she didn't even try to keep. And in the ICU, Gage leaned forward, resting both hands on the bed rail. "I've got you, kid," he whispered. And this time, the law backed him. The first thing I saw when I woke up wasn't a ceiling. It wasn't my grandfather's face, or the blur of a nurse, or even the blinding white of ICU lights. It was a clipboard. More specifically, a chart clipped to the edge of my hospital bed. At the bottom, in bold capital letters, a phrase I couldn't process fast enough. New legal guardian. And right underneath that, a name, Gage Pierce. My throat burned. My ribs hurt. Something was in my nose, my arms, and I was pretty sure I couldn't feel my left leg. But all of that was background noise to that single line. Something had changed drastically while I'd been unconscious. Someone had made a decision that saved my life. And it wasn't the woman who gave birth to me. "Hey," a hoarse voice said from beside me. I turned slowly. My grandfather sat in the stiff hospital chair, his elbows on his knees, hands clasped like he'd been praying or bargaining with something that didn't listen much. His eyes were bloodshot and rimmed in salt. "You're awake," he breathed, then pressed the call button for the nurse without taking his eyes off me. "You're safe now, Cole." I wanted to speak, but my lips barely moved. My voice cracked like wet paper. Still, I managed 2 words. "What happened?" He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't baby me. Didn't pretend the truth would come later. "You were in a car accident on the 126, driving home from Ventura. It was bad. A semi jackknifed in the rain." He paused. "You almost didn't make it." I closed my eyes, and the memories flickered. Metal screaming. Glass raining. A woman's voice on the phone saying, "Don't call me tomorrow. We'll be at the spa all day." He saw something in my face shift. "You remember something?" "I remember leaving the cookout." He nodded slowly. "That's where it started." He told me everything else. That the trauma team needed immediate consent to operate. That the hospital called Helena because she was still listed as my legal guardian. That she was in OG with Avery mid-facial. And when asked for permission to save my life, she said, "If it dies, let me know. I don't have time for paperwork." Then Avery laughed, took a screenshot of me on a stretcher, bleeding. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My heart wasn't breaking. It was going numb, like someone had turned off the pain just long enough for me to float above it, watching. Hospital staff recorded the call, Gage added. They flagged it for risk management. That was enough for Daniel, our lawyer, to petition for emergency guardianship transfer. The court agreed. I signed the papers. I turned my head toward the chart again. "So, it's real. It's real," he said. "You're not going back there." I felt that line settle in my chest like the first breath of clean air after smoke. I wasn't going back to Montecito. Not to her. Later that afternoon, a nurse came in to update my file. She confirmed my name, date of birth, and said something about how I'd originally been logged under the Reynolds name, Richard's last name, because of an insurance record mismatch. That name again, Reynolds, a name I never chose. I remembered that locked drawer in Richard's office, the insurance forms, the one with my name blacked out, replaced with something cleaner, more convenient. They'd been planning something. I knew that now. It wasn't paranoia. It was strategy. Daniel visited that evening. He asked one question. Cole, do you want to return to your mother's home? I did not scream. I did not cry. I just shook my head and said, that's not my home. He nodded. That's all I need. The next morning, the hospital buzzed, not with alarms, but with energy, PR reps pacing the hallway. A man in a crisp blazer asking for a quiet conversation on behalf of the Reynolds family. He offered a donation to the hospital if the situation could be handled with grace. Daniel told him to get lost. In more elegant legal terms. I watched it all from my room, knowing I was the storm they were trying to contain. Then came the emergency hearing. Daniel wheeled me into the courtroom. Gage walked beside me. I hadn't left ICU for more than 5 minutes in 2 weeks, and now I was sitting in front of a judge in Santa Barbara with an IV still taped to my hand. Helena showed up looking exactly how I remembered. Expensive, immaculate, performative. She didn't look at me once. Avery clung to her like a guilty shadow. Makeup perfect, lips tight. The judge asked for the facts. The court clerk played the recording. Helena's voice filled the courtroom, breezy and cold. If it dies, let me know. I don't have time for paperwork. Then Avery's laugh. The room went still. Nurse Park testified. So did Dr. Caroline. Daniel presented the call log, the missed surgery window, the screenshots, every digital breadcrumb, every omission from the hospital contact file. They tried to erase my grandfather from the records, erase any backup plan that didn't involve them. They removed protective contacts, shifted insurance coverage, changed his last name in some systems. It was structured neglect, Daniel said. By design. The judge took it all in, then issued the ruling. Temporary guardianship officially transferred to Gage Pierce. All rights of parental medical decision-making revoked from Helena Reynolds. I left that courtroom with more pain than I walked in with. But for the first time in my life, it wasn't pain someone else had the right to ignore. And outside, as the cameras started rolling, I heard Daniel whisper to Gage, they'll either try to play victims or drag this out in court, but this isn't over. I looked at him. It wasn't fear in his voice. It was readiness. Recovery wasn't a montage. It wasn't sunshine through windows or inspirational music. It was me in a back bedroom at Gage's house in Ventura, learning how to stand on one leg while a nurse held my elbow. It was the sound of my own breath as I tried to put weight on a foot that still didn't feel like mine. It was dropping a spoon twice during breakfast because my fingers shook too hard to grip anything. But it was also progress. Gage cleared out his old office to make space for my recovery gear. He didn't hover. He didn't pity me. He just brought me water and listened when I cursed at the pain. I started therapy with Dr. Mira Shah. She didn't ask about the crash. Not at first. She asked me what it felt like to sit in silence in a house where people only looked at you when they needed something. I told her it felt like being erased. We worked from there. Then the text started. Helena sent one first. I know you're hurting, so am I. I wish you could see the full picture. Then I've lost everything, Cole. Don't take away what little I have left. I did not respond. I showed Daniel instead. He told me to keep every message. They aren't apologies. They're optics. A week later, news broke that Richard had filed for divorce. Irreconcilable differences, public reputation, financial preservation. He cut ties fast and clean, and Helena was suddenly alone. Avery's school issued a statement about disciplinary review. Her scholarship applications disappeared overnight. Montecito wasn't a fortress. It was a house of cards. The final custody hearing came 7 weeks later. I walked into that courtroom on crutches, not because I wanted pity, but because I refused to be wheeled anywhere again. I testified last. I told the judge the truth. That night, I said, when the doctor said I needed surgery and my mom declined, something in me died before my body ever could. I wasn't her son. I was a file, a liability, something to manage. I looked at Helena then. She was crying, or trying to. I'm not asking for money. I'm not even asking for an apology. I'm asking to be free, to stay where I'm safe. I looked at Gage. That's with him. The judge ruled quickly. Parental rights permanently terminated for Helena Reynolds. Full legal guardianship transferred to Gage Pierce. The court authorized adoption proceedings. The rest happened fast. A lien on the Montecito property, hospital bills filed through civil court. Helena's employer dropped her. Avery transferred schools. Richard remarried someone younger and even more vanilla. I signed my adoption papers at age 18. I didn't change my name, but I changed everything else. I finished high school, enrolled in a state college near Ventura, studied social work. Today I work with kids like me. Not all of them survive. Not all of them make it out with someone like Gage in their corner. But when they look up at me and ask, how did you get out? I tell them the truth. Someone stayed. That's all it takes sometimes. 1 person who refuses to leave when it's inconvenient. 2 signatures on a hospital form that says you're worth it. The last thing I read in that hospital was new legal guardian. Now I know what that really meant. It meant family isn't who raised you. It's who refuses to let you. Wish he was our only son, Dad said about my brother. 5 years later, I bought their house. They saw me on TV as a CEO. Mom cried. We miss you. I hung up. I wasn't meant to be home so early. I had swapped shifts with one of the other guys at the warehouse, Miguel, I believe, since he needed to pick up his kid. So, instead of the normal 7, I clocked out at 2:15 and decided to surprise my parents by picking up groceries on the way home. Just the essentials, milk, eggs, and frozen pizza for dinner. I did not expect a celebration or even a thank you. That has never worked in our house, but I thought they may appreciate it. Perhaps that would be one of those minor details that got me a hey. Thank you, Dean. That's my name, Dean. I was 28 at the time, and I was still living at home. And believe me, I get how that sounds. I was not proud of it, but it was useful. I was paying off some college debt, saving for a used car that didn't sputter on hills, and attempting to save enough money to move out without plunging into a black hole of rent and ramen. The deal was that I pay $350 each month, clean up after myself, and stay out of the way. The last part was the unstated clause. My brother Lucas, on the other hand, was golden. He's 2 years younger than me, 26, charming, and always knew what to say at the appropriate time. He was the type of student that professors admired in high school, even though he turned in his essays late, the sort who can slam his automobile into a fence and get the neighbor to apologize for putting the fence up. You know the type. To be honest, I did not despise him for it. I used to admire it. I figured if I stayed near enough, some of that shine may rub off on me. But, with time, I began to notice the trend. Every time I got a B+, he earned an A-. When I received a warehouse promotion, he was unexpectedly offered a higher-paying internship through one of Dad's acquaintances. When I paid off my first student loan installment, Mom hardly glanced at the receipt I taped to the fridge. Meanwhile, Lucas remembered to put his clothing in the hamper, so they threw him a celebratory meal. Okay, not literally, but you get the idea. Still, I told myself I was overreacting, that it was just natural favoritism that occurs when one child is easier to brag about than another. I kept my head down, worked, cleaned, paid the rent, and bit my tongue. That afternoon, I entered through the rear door, arms full of grocery bags. The home was abnormally silent. There's no TV or Lucas, just the quiet hum of voices in the kitchen. I figured they hadn't heard me enter. Then I heard my father's voice. I sometimes wish Lucas was our only child. I came to a halt and halted in the hallway, like if a ghost was haunting the laminate flooring. My stomach fell, but part of me, a naive, hopeful shard, felt he was joking and that there would be a punchline. Something like, life would be dull, right? But then Mom spoke. I know what you mean, she answered casually. It is just easier. He's not as emotionally needy or dramatic. They then chuckled. Not just a chuckle, but a genuine laugh. The kind that fills a room and bounces off its walls. I stood for 4 minutes. I counted. I stood there, grasping the grocery bags, till the plastic cut into my fingers and the eggs sweated through the carton. And then I turned silently, as if I had never entered at all. I opened the door, went back into the sunlight, and walked out silently. It took them 4 months to notice I was gone. I did not bang any doors. I did not compose a theatrical note. I did not post anything online or leave a paper trail. I just disappeared. I took out the remaining $275 from my checking account. I used it to purchase a one-way bus ticket to a city 2.5 hours away, where my college friend Caleb lived. He owes me a favor. We hadn't spoken in months, but when I called to ask if I might stay on his couch for a while, he didn't hesitate. Said, yeah, come through. I told him I needed to start over. I didn't tell him why. The first couple of nights were hard. I felt like a ghost. I kept checking my phone, as if I was waiting for a text that said, where are you? Or, is everything all right? There's nothing. Lucas sent a group chat message about a new whiskey he was testing, and Mom forwarded a meme about cats who dislike Mondays. Not a word about me. Caleb's flat was small and smelled faintly of old clothes, but it was warm, and he didn't ask questions. He worked nights for a security agency, so I had the home to myself throughout the day. I began taking up odd jobs. Unloading warehouses, delivering groceries, and working as a temporary storage facility employee. It wasn't flashy, but it was enough to keep me fed and pay the rent. I opened a savings account at a different bank and signed up for a new phone plan. I rebuilt my life one brick at a time, in complete silence. And, strangely, I did not feel sorry. Not at first. I felt hollow, like if my emotional limbs had been cut and I hadn't realized it. I kept expecting grief to strike and panic to set in, but it didn't. Not until one night, about 1:40 a.m., when Caleb arrived home. He found me sitting on the kitchen floor with the fridge door open, eating peanut butter with a spoon, and crying so hard I couldn't breathe. I believe it was the peanut butter that caused it. My mother used to buy the exact same brand, Crunchy Gold. It was always stored on the third shelf. Seeing it again shattered something within me. I told Caleb everything that night, from the hallway incident to the 4-minute wait and the sound of my parents laughing. He didn't say anything at first, only sat next to me and let me speak. He got up, prepared coffee, and said, "You're not going back there ever." I nodded. I already knew that. Still, I wondered how long it would take them to discover I was gone. 1 month? 1 month? It turns out it took 4 months. And when they did finally contact out, it wasn't even over the phone. It was a group email. Subject line, family check-in. I opened it, my pulse hammering, hoping to see some indication of worry or question about my well-being. But, no, it was Mom, inquiring whether anyone had plans for Thanksgiving. She listed who was bringing what, asked Lucas whether his new girlfriend was coming, and ended with a passive line. "Dean, please let us know if you're around." If I was present, it would be as if I had just gone for a walk and become sidetracked. That was when the void solidified into something else. Not quite angry. Not yet, but the cold clarity that comes with truly accepting someone for who they are. I did not respond, but I began planning. Not only how to keep away, but also how to ensure they never forgot that moment in the kitchen. That chuckle, that sentence, that option. And that's when things really started to change. I did not respond to the Thanksgiving email. I did not send a text. I didn't even check the follow-up email, which arrived 10 days later with the subject line urgent cranberry sauce or no, but I saw it. I read every communication they sent because I couldn't bring myself to block them. Not yet. I wanted to know how long they pretended I wasn't missing. Thanksgiving has come and gone. I spent it in a diner with Caleb and some of his pals. We all chipped in and ordered the pathetic little turkey dinner special they were giving. We laughed despite slices of desiccated turkey, canned mashed potatoes, and green beans as limp as straws. We talked about ridiculous stuff. I didn't feel like a ghost that night, and no one questioned why I wasn't with my family. 10 days later, Lucas texted me for the first time since my disappearance. "Hello, dude, you okay?" That was it. No context, no follow-up. I stared at it for an hour before deleting it. Not responding, not blocking, only deleting. Then came Christmas. The big exam. I anticipated to receive a call by then, perhaps even a guilt trip voicemail. But, nah. Another group email. Christmas meal plans, complete with a Google Sheets link to see who is bringing what. I was not even included in the spreadsheet. Lucas was ready for the ham. Aunt Lorraine had pie. Mom had mashed potatoes and a festive atmosphere. Dad had a drink. Dean was invisible. That's when it struck me. This was not an oversight. This was not an error. This was their kind of quiet agreement. They pretended I had relocated for work or that I was away doing something else. They could just vacuum seal and store me somewhere, similar to a sun-shaped vacuum. So I made my selection. If they were going to remove me, I'd make it impossible for them to ignore. I began working double shifts. I saved every penny I could. I stopped purchasing anything I didn't absolutely need. Caleb helped me print flyers for freelance handyman services, furniture assembly, TV mounting, and basic repairs. I distributed them throughout the community and taped one to each laundry bulletin board within a 12-mile radius. The situation gradually improved. My savings increased. I wasn't simply surviving anymore. I was stacking cash. For the first time in years, I felt in control, like my future belonged to me. Meanwhile, the texts from home were scarce. January, "I hope you are staying warm." February, "Dad says, hi, Lucas got a new car." March, "Grandma is approaching her 82nd birthday. Are you coming?" I ignored them until April. That's when I received the voicemail. My phone rang while I was working on a leaking faucet at the home of a retired couple. "I saw your missed call, Mom." I rolled my eyes and pushed the phone back into my pocket. But later that night, something prompted me to check the message. Her voice seemed unsteady, not sad, just off. "Hello, Dean. I hope you're doing well. We have not heard from you. I know things have been weird. Maybe we said something incorrect, but we still love you, okay? We actually do. Just let us know you're okay." There was a break at the conclusion, around 5 seconds, before the message ended. She seemed to be trying to come up with something additional to say but couldn't. I almost broke. Almost. But then I remembered that afternoon and how the plastic bags bit into my fingertips. Their laughing echoed down the hall. And suddenly, that voicemail felt theatrical, as if an actor had missed her cue. I did not respond, not even when Lucas texted me 3 days later. "You're being dramatic. Please come home already." That was impressive coming from him. Especially because, while all of this was going on, I began hearing from old neighbors and friends back home. Not directly, but via social media posts shared by Caleb's cousin, who still resided in our town. Things like Lucas finally getting that promotion, or Lucas and Dad going to the golf course together. Family tradition. Family tradition. I hadn't been invited on a family outing in years. Not since I was 22 and began questioning why I was constantly paying my own bills while Lucas had a seemingly endless financial account. And now, at 28, I was essentially a ghost in their timeline. Then came the true gut hit. It was Saturday and rainy. I remember because I had just returned from unclogging someone's gutter and my hoodie was wet through. I was scrolling through Instagram when I noticed it. This is a post from my cousin Sophie. She tagged both my parents and Lucas. The snapshot was a large group shot at a restaurant, everybody dressed up. The caption said, "So proud of Lucas's engagement. Beautiful meal with the family. Ring. Engagement. Dinner with the family." I zoomed in. Sure enough, there they were. Mom, Dad, Uncle Mark, Aunt Lorraine, Lucas's fiancée, a blonde girl I'd never met before, and a table full of happy people. All of them. Every single extended family member that ever attended our Christmas and picnics. And I am nowhere, not even mentioned. I put down my phone. I went outside. I did not even grab a jacket. I just walked until I lost feeling in my fingers, until the drizzle poured into my flesh, numbing my face. Until my lungs ached from the cold. That was the breaking moment. This is not the kitchen conversation, not the silence, not the 4 months spent pretending I didn't exist. It was that photo and that caption. They were creating a life, a family, and a future, and I was not a part of it. Not even a footnote. That night, I did not cry. I did not anger. I did not shout into the void. I wrote a letter to myself rather than to them. It was 6 pages long. I wrote it all in one session. By hand, I outlined everything they had ever said. Every time, they dismissed me. Every time Lucas was commended for breathing, I was chastised for attempting. I wrote everything, and then I destroyed everything. Not for symbolism, but to stay warm while the space heater sputtered in the corner. And then I devised a fresh idea, not only to move on, but to advance. To create something so impenetrable, so unmistakable, that when they recognized what they had done, it was too late. The door would be closed, secured, and buried in concrete. And just when I thought the universe was going to give me a break, it threw me another curveball. Lucas called, not texted or emailed. He did call. It was Tuesday. I remember because I was midway through cooking boxed mac and cheese when the screen turned on. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Dean replied, his voice light and nonchalant, as if nothing had happened. Yes, I said flat. Hey, man, it has been a long time since we spoke. Yes, he laughed awkwardly. So, I have some major news. I said nothing. I am getting married. He continued in July. We have decided to go to the beach. Mom and Dad are assisting out. It's going to be massive. Like, everyone is coming. I looked at the saucepan of boiling noodles. Do you want me to come? I said, not a question. Okay, yeah, you are my brother. I waited. He said nothing else, so I asked why now. He paused. Look, Mom has been rather upset. You know how she is. Emotional. She wants the entire family present. Yeah. And Dad is trying to be cool about it, but he misses you, man. I nearly laughed. Almost. Anyway, he carried on. We believed this would be a good opportunity to eliminate whatever craziness was going on. Squash, I repeated. Yeah. You know, bury the hatchet. There was a prolonged hush. Dean, he mentioned. I inhaled slowly and then exhaled. I said, I'll think about it, because I knew they hadn't changed. They were not sorry. They only wanted a lovely wedding shot. And that was the greatest betrayal yet. I didn't attend the wedding. I never said no. After that call, I let the days pass, one by one, until July arrived and the beach wedding was over. There was no RSVP, message, apology, or guilt, just nothing. And amid the silence, I expected to feel something. Regret, perhaps, or humiliation, a knot in my stomach for not being the bigger person. But I did not. I had a peculiar sense of tranquility. A numb, frigid tranquility, but peace nonetheless. I felt as if I had finally stopped picking at a wound and let it to heal. Then followed the crash. Not the dramatic type. No job loss, no betrayal by a friend, no medical emergency, just the gradual type, the kind that seeps into your bones in the silence, after you've left everything behind. The kind that develops when you're alone for too long and your mind begins to play tricks, whispering that maybe you were the problem, that maybe they were right, that if your own parents didn't miss you, maybe you weren't worth missing at all. I stopped going out as often. I began turning down handyman projects. I told Caleb I was exhausted, which wasn't a lie, but it wasn't entirely accurate either. I spent more and more time on the couch, eating takeout and watching people on YouTube improve their lives while my own stalled. Caleb was patient, but not clueless. You've got to get up, man, he said one night, standing in the doorway with a plastic fork and a half-eaten container of lo mein. You've been in that hoodie for 5 days. I didn't respond. I could not. I just stared at the carpet, as if it had secrets to reveal. You're not them, he said. Do you know that? I nodded, but it did not stick. Not really. He sighed, shook his head, and walked off. That night, I finally looked in the mirror. More than just a glance. I looked. I was pale. My hair was a mess. I had that sunken look around my eyes, which is caused by sleeping too much rather than not enough. My hoodie was stiff with grease stains and dried ketchup. I appeared to have come to a stop. That was the bottom. Not a moment, not an event, but the realization that I had vanished from my own life. The following morning, I showered. It sounded small, but it felt enormous. I washed the hoodie twice and hung it to dry on the balcony like a battle flag. I shaved, trimmed my nails, and had an actual breakfast of eggs rather than chips or cereal. Real eggs. And then I opened my notebook, that battered spiral notebook where I kept lists of every skill I possessed, every business idea I'd ever had, and every dream I'd put off because I was too busy trying to be the kind of son who might earn a "we're proud of you." And I turned to the page titled "Someday." At the top of that page were the words, "Own something real, something mine, something they can't take or ignore." It struck me like a punch. I didn't just want to avoid my parents. I wanted to create something that they couldn't deny. So I chose the idea that I had circled 3 times. Custom woodworking and repairs. It sounded simple, but I had a vision. Making things rather than just fixing them. Handmade furniture, home improvements, wood accents, personalized shelving, all the things I used to help my grandfather build in his garage before he died. Stuff that lasted. I didn't have the money to rent a shop, but I did have 2 hands, a few tools, and enough money saved to complete one solid project. So I made a bench, sanded it smooth, burned a pattern into the seat with an old wood burner I found on Facebook Marketplace, stained and sealed it, and posted it online with the caption "Handmade. Custom, 1 of 1. It sold in 2 days for just $180, but it felt like winning the lottery. So I created a second one. This time, it's a coffee table. 10 days later, someone messaged me, asking if I could do a complete set, including table, chairs, and shelves. I did not sleep that night. I kept thinking that they wanted more. They want something I made. That marked the beginning of Second Grain. The name came from a dumb conversation with Caleb about how wood has a first grain, which you can see right away, and then a second grain, which is deeper, more subtle, and only visible when the light hits it just right. "You're the second grain," he explained. They never saw it, but it was always present. I registered the company name, created a basic website, and began doing jobs on weekends while still taking on handyman work during the week. It was hard. I was always tired, but I was no longer depressed. And the best part? Every sale, client, and custom order was mine. It wasn't handed to me, nor did I get it because someone called or pulled a string. I deserved it. Dean, the kid who stood in a hallway listening to his parents laugh about how life would be better without him. That laugh echoed less and less each day, especially when I opened my email one night and found this. Subject, custom table as a wedding gift. Message, "Hello, I found your website through a friend. Your work is beautiful. I was wondering if you did custom engraving. My fiancé and I are getting married this fall, and we would love to have a custom gift table with our initials and date. Please let me know if you are available." Signed, Madeline Brooks. I stared at the screen. Madeline was Lucas's fiancée. She didn't know who I was. She must have found my website through a friend or a reshared post. However, the email footer contained their name and wedding date. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. I did not respond right away. Instead, I took a walk around the park, past the quiet tree-lined streets, allowing the wind to carry away the last of my hesitation. Because this was the first time I could reach back across the line they had drawn. Not with rage, not with shouting, but with evidence. Proof that I had value, had evolved into something, and had not vanished. I evolved. However, I knew that if I said yes, I would not do it for them. Not for Lucas, not for Mom, not even to make a point. I would do it for myself. To remind myself that I could be the type of man who shows up when it counts, even if no one else does. I got home, sat down, and said, "Hello, Madeline. Yes, I do custom engraving and would be honored to help you create something special for your wedding. Congratulations to you both. Let's talk design." No signature, no indication of my identity, just a name and a product. And when I clicked send, I didn't feel petty. I felt powerful. Because they may have forgotten me, but the world has not, and I am only getting started. I didn't tell Madeline who I am. Not in the email, invoice, or final delivery note. I kept it professional, warm, polite, and slightly detached. I let her be another client, another name on the spreadsheet I'd created to track orders and shipments. However, the irony was not lost on me. She was marrying my brother, the golden boy, the focal point of every dinner table and photo frame. The same guy who once asked if I could come by and fix the garbage disposal a week after I moved out, as if nothing had changed. And now she wanted me to make a centerpiece for their wedding gift table. That would have been sufficient for most people. Enough irony and closure. But the longer I worked on the piece, the smoother the engravings became. The more the walnut gleamed under the finish, the more a thought raced through my mind like a heartbeat. They still do not know who I am. It started small. I imagined delivering the piece in person and seeing Lucas' expression when he saw me. I imagine mom and dad hovering behind him, pretending not to look. I can imagine the silence, the discomfort, the stammered greetings, and the, "Oh, hey, wow, you look great." But imagination was not enough. I desired control. I desired precision. I did not want to cause a scene. I wanted to write the entire script and have them sit in the audience, eyes wide, hands shaking, with no idea what would happen next. So I got to work. First, I restructured Second Grain as an LLC. I had been operating as a sole proprietor, but now that orders were coming in steadily, it was time to go official. I filled out the paperwork, hired a part-time CPA, and established a business bank account. The logo evolved from a napkin sketch by Caleb to a clean, minimal brand that I used on everything, including boxes, invoices, and even a burn stamp for each completed piece. Next, I updated the website. I included testimonials and organized a digital portfolio. And this was important, I started a blog, not a diary. This was storytelling, with photos of my builds, stories behind them, and design insights buried between those entries. I also included the type of personal post that people scroll past without thinking. The table that began it all. That is what I called it. I discussed my first major commission, which was a custom wedding table engraved with initials and a fall date. I didn't mention any names. I didn't post faces, but I made sure the details were specific enough that anyone in the family who happened to come across that page would think, "Wait a second, is that?" But they wouldn't be certain. And that was the point. Meanwhile, I accepted Madeline's payment and forwarded her design mock-ups. She chose one. I began carving. Days passed, orders continued, and then, about 18 days before the wedding, I received an unexpected call. "Mom." My finger hovered above the screen. I could have let it go to voicemail. I should have, but something compelled me to respond. "Hello." She did not speak for a single second. "Dean," she finally said softly, as if she didn't know it was me. "Yeah, hello." She paused again. "I saw your blog. The table post. Bingo." I remained quiet. "I didn't realize you were doing so well," she continued. "Your father and I had no idea." I could almost hear her trying to find the right words. She was not calling to apologize. She was calling because the illusion had broken. For years, they told themselves that I was just learning and finding my way, feeling a little lost. They now knew I had a plan, and it didn't involve them. "I am proud of you," she said. I smiled. "Thanks." Another pause. "Will you be attending the wedding?" There it was, the trap. I could have answered yes. I could have agreed to play the good son, the long-lost relative, or the forgiving brother, but I wasn't interested in being involved anymore. I wanted to be seen. So I said, "I believe I will drop off the table in person. I'd like to ensure it arrives safely." "Oh," she replied, surprised. "Well, that'd be lovely." Beautiful, God. We hung up shortly thereafter. The subsequent 18 days were a blur of preparation. I finished the table, routed the edges, sealed the engraving, and added a hidden drawer on the underside, which I did not tell Madeline about. A small design flourish lined with felt where they could store keepsakes or notes. In that drawer, I kept a sealed envelope. No return address or signature, just the words, "Read after the wedding." The envelope contained a single-page letter. It read, "You don't know me, not really, but you have heard of me. I am the one who disappeared. The one your fiancé's family will never bring up. And that is fine. You do not owe me anything. But this table was built by a version of me that they never saw. The person who did not vanish. The one who built himself out of silence. Congratulations on the wedding. I hope your marriage is based on truth, not performance. There's no rage or guilt trip, just facts." Caleb felt it was too subtle. He suggested dropping a grenade in their laps. "This is more like a quiet cough in the corner." But that was the beauty of it. It wasn't vengeance, not in the explosive sense. It was the emotional equivalent of walking past someone who used to dismiss you and seeing their eyes widen as they realize you've outgrown them. And just to make sure I got the point across, I made one last move. I contacted a friend of Caleb's who worked in local PR. She owed him a favor. I asked if she could get a small feature in one of those online lifestyle blogs that promote local makers and small businesses. She said yes. The article came out the day before the wedding. Second Grain, how one local artisan turned pain into purpose. My face wasn't in it, but my story was lightly edited, sanitized. The blog described how I started after walking away from a toxic family dynamic and how I'd quietly built something on my own terms. The kicker, they included a photo of the wedding table front and center. Anyone in the family reading that article would know exactly who the table was for, but no one could say anything without admitting the truth, that I was the missing son, the one they laughed about, the one who walked away and built something better. So when I pulled into the venue that afternoon, box trailer hitched behind my borrowed pickup, I didn't feel nervous. I felt calm. I wore jeans and a black button-down. Nothing flashy, no big entrance, just another vendor arriving to make a delivery. The parking attendant waved me through. Madeline greeted me with a huge smile. She was stunning in a silver silk dress with embroidered cuffs. You must be Dean. Oh my God, the table is beautiful. Thanks, I said, smiling. I'm glad you like it. I had no idea you were local, she added. It's perfect, seriously. And then right behind her, Lucas. He froze when he saw me, like he'd seen a ghost with a hammer, but I didn't flinch. Hey, I said, like it was nothing. He blinked. You made this. I nodded. Second grain, that's me. Madeline looked between us. Wait, you two know each other? I shrugged. We've met. Lucas still hadn't spoken. Anyway, I said, congrats to you both. I left a little surprise under the table for after the honeymoon. Madeline lit up. You're the sweetest. And with that, I walked away. No drama, no scene, just the look on Lucas's face, somewhere between awe and fear. And that, more than any speech, was the moment I knew. They finally saw me, and they couldn't unsee me. The wedding itself passed without incident. At least not the kind people whisper about during the reception or replay later in group chats. I didn't stay. I didn't linger. I didn't hover near the bar hoping for eye contact or closure. I delivered the table, exchanged polite words, and left before the ceremony even started. That was deliberate. Revenge, real revenge, isn't loud. It doesn't need witnesses in the moment. It needs time. It needs space. It needs people to sit with what they've ignored until it starts to itch. I went home, took a long shower, and slept for 9 straight hours. The kind of sleep you get when you finally finish something heavy and set it down for good. The fallout didn't happen all at once. It came in waves. The first wave hit 3 days later. Lucas called me. Not text, not voicemail, a call. I let it ring once, twice. On the third ring, I answered. What? I said, not angry, just flat. What the hell was that? He snapped, skipping every possible greeting. The table? I asked. You liked it, right? This isn't funny, he said. Madeline found the letter. I leaned back on the couch. Okay. She was upset, he continued, confused. She asked why no one ever talks about you. Why she didn't know I had a brother who built the centerpiece for our wedding. That sounds uncomfortable, I said. You embarrassed us. No, I replied calmly. I told the truth quietly. You embarrassed yourselves. He went silent. Then, Mom's been crying. I nearly laughed. Almost. About what? I asked. She keeps saying she didn't know you felt that way. That you were hurting. That if she'd known. She didn't know, I interrupted. She heard me. Or she didn't. Either way, she chose what was easier. Lucas exhaled sharply. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I said. I did. He hung up on me. The second wave came from extended family. Aunt Lorraine sent me a long email. Not apologizing, just explaining. Explaining how hard parenting is, how no one is perfect, how sometimes things get said in private that aren't meant to be taken seriously. I replied with one sentence. Some things only matter because they're said in private. Uncle Mark tried humor. Sent me a message saying, guess we owe you a beer, kid. I didn't respond. My cousin Sophie, bless her, actually called. She didn't dance around it. I didn't know, she said. None of us did. They really messed this up. I know. I said that was enough. The third wave was the one that mattered. Mom and Dad asked to meet. Not right away. It took them almost 5 weeks. 5 weeks of awkward conversations with relatives. 5 weeks of sideways glances. 5 weeks of people asking, so where's Dean these days? 5 weeks of reading comments under the article about second grain that said things like, love seeing people succeed after cutting out toxic family. That word toxic followed them everywhere. We met at a neutral place, a quiet cafe halfway between my apartment and their house. I got there early, ordered coffee, sat with my back straight, and my hands relaxed on the table. I didn't rehearse anything. I did not need to. They arrived together, sat down like they were attending a meeting they hoped would end quickly. Mom looked smaller than I remembered. Dad looked tired. We exchanged pleasantries, weather, traffic, the usual cowardly warm-up. Then Mom broke. I didn't mean it, she said. What you heard. It wasn't serious. I didn't argue. I just looked at her. Dad cleared his throat. We didn't know you were struggling. I nodded. That's the problem. They waited for years. I continued. I tried to earn space in this family, not love, just space to be seen, to be acknowledged. When I stopped trying, you didn't notice. When I left, you didn't notice. You only noticed when other people did. Mom's eyes filled with tears. That's not true. It is, I said gently. You didn't call because you missed me. You called because you saw the block. Dad opened his mouth. Closed it. I'm not here to punish you, I went on. I'm not here to yell. I'm here to tell you what's going to happen next. They leaned in, finally listening. I don't want a relationship, I said. Not right now. Maybe not ever. I don't hate you. I just don't trust you with my life anymore. Mom reached for my hand. I pulled it back. Not harshly, just firmly. I built something, I said. Not a business, a self. And I won't hand it back to people who only value it when it looks good in public. Silence. Dad nodded slowly. So that's it. Yes, I said. That's it. They didn't fight me on it. That was the most telling part. We stood. They left. I stayed long enough to finish my coffee. The final wave came months later. Second grain took off. Not overnight, not viral, just steady. Word of mouth, repeat clients, commercial commissions. I hired a second worker, then a third, moved into a real shop with a roll-up door and my logo painted on the side. One afternoon, while reviewing invoices, I got an email from Madeline Brooks. She thanked me again for the table, said it was the only part of the wedding that felt grounded, real. She said the letter made her think, ask questions, have conversations she'd been avoiding. She didn't ask me to intervene, didn't ask me to fix anything. She just said, I'm glad you exist. That was enough. I never reconciled with my parents. Not fully. We exchanged the occasional polite message on birthdays. Nothing more. Lucas and I don't speak at all. And that's okay, because the revenge wasn't ruining their lives. It was refusing to keep shrinking mine. They laughed once in a kitchen, thinking they were alone. They weren't, and they never will be again. The last time I walked past my workshop at night, lights glowing inside, I caught my reflection in the glass. I didn't see the kid in the hallway anymore. I saw the man who walked back out the door and never needed to. My grandma disowned us the day I was born. 16 years later, she returned, broke, begging for shelter. Dad's reply left her speechless. While my mother was physically in labor with me, my grandma on my father's side declared, I'm cutting you both out of my life. My other son's wife is wealthy and can fund my retirement. Your wife is a slow food stamp collector with horrible hair. Dad's jaws dropped, and his jaw clenched in rage. Get the hell out if you're going to be racist to my wife. My grandma backed off, clearly outraged. It's not racist. It's the truth. Your brother's wife is the best thing that's happened to us. She stared at my father as if he were a foolish child when he claimed that finding true love was the best thing that had occurred. Good luck with your real love, don't come crawling back when she's framed you for a theft you didn't commit. She exited the delivery room, immediately buying airplane tickets with her other daughter-in-law's credit cards. I wasn't there to witness it, but my grandmother's actions sparked a fire within my parents. Mom pushed herself into teaching when I was a little older, and Dad worked extra shifts at the warehouse. When I was 7, Mom and Dad had saved enough money to start an after-school program. Mom tutored, while Dad taught life skills, such as car repair and DIY insulation for walls. Soon, 45 children had shown up. Meanwhile, my grandmother was living with my uncle and his wife Clara, traveling on vacation, spending her money, and purchasing new cars simply because she could. However, neither family was aware of this. Clara had been in the delivery room when I was born. She'd stood silently in the doorway, and hearing her mother-in-law refer to a newborn baby as a disgrace moved something inside her. That's when she learned about my father's achievements. By this point, the program had a second location. My parents were making enough money to relocate to a house with a pool and take vacations where I would have my own hotel room. That was when Clara made her move. Market's been rough lately. We're losing a lot, she casually said during a smaller than usual family dinner. Grandma's eyes quickly widened. Clara quickly depleted the funds on my grandmother's card, causing it to decrease. Then grandmother's king-size bed was replaced with a single. Then came the big announcement. Clara arrived to lunch crying. The lawyers say my trust fund could be frozen for years. We'll lose everything, my grandmother exclaimed. Are you seriously telling me you're going broke? Clara said, nodding as if it were true. Over the next 3 weeks, grandmother's expensive garments were auctioned to offset stock losses. Her $30 coffee was replaced with instant, and Clara and Richie even moved into an apartment to make the financial loss appear more realistic. That's when my granny snapped. I think I need some space from you two while you figure things out financially. It's just so stressful for me. And with that, she stopped coming to dinners. She began avoiding Clara's calls, all for money that was never actually lost. That was when she realized she had another son. I was 16 years old when she came up at our door. Dad was at work, while Mom was at home. I'll never forget my grandmother's expression when she saw our house. The mental math was visible. The pool, the 2 vehicles, and my MacBook on the counter. I've been thinking about family lately, she explained, clutching her counterfeit designer purse. I realize I may have been hasty in the past. Mom, who is better than anyone deserves, asked her in for coffee. My grandmother sat in our kitchen, looking at our vacation photos, the accolades from the after-school program, and the life we'd established without her. I always knew you two would make something of yourselves, she'd said. I just wanted to give you space to grow. She burst into tears about being abandoned by both sons, feeling lonely, and how family should stick together. Then came the request. I just need a little help getting back on my feet. Maybe I could stay in your guest room, just temporarily. Dad arrived home during the concert. He listened. Then he spoke calmly. You called my baby a disgrace in the delivery room while my wife was still bleeding. I was upset. I didn't mean. You meant every word, he shouted. And you know how Clara is supposedly going broke? Grandmother's ears perked up. How do you know that? She inquired. My father just smirked. How do you know that? Brothers talk, Mom, he finally responded. He moved around, clearly relishing her panic. You are aware that Clara's trust fund was never frozen. Grandmother's jaw dropped. What do you mean? She inquired, afraid to hear the answer. Clara is a smart woman, Mom. She knows you only loved her money, so she put you to the test. My granny turned white. That's impossible, she said, but she didn't believe herself. Clara can buy you a Bentley at the snap of a finger. But now she never will, and you'll never see a cent off me either. Now get out of my house. Grandma has become desperate. Please, I'm your mother. You can't just. You're right. I can't just abandon family. Dad stood up. But I can give you exactly what you gave us, which is nothing. He shooed her out. And now comes the finest part. When my grandmother called my uncle from our driveway, sobbing because we had rejected her, he interrupted her. You know, Mom, my marriage has been better since you left. Clara and I aren't fighting, and we enjoy cheap TV dinners without you nagging us over $120 wine bottles. You're not welcome back. Her jaw fell. She returned inside, begging. Please, I'll go homeless if you don't take me in. Mom and Dad exchanged glances, knowing what she was saying was true. Their gazes locked for what seemed like an eternity, as grandmother stood between them, shivering. Mom's face had that teacher expression she gets when a child in the program needs assistance, but has also done something wrong. Dad's jaw remained stiff, but his eyes softened somewhat as he gazed at Mom. Finally, Mom spoke quietly but firmly, insisting that they discuss things alone first. Grandmother's sobbing grew louder, and she clutched Dad's arm, asking them not to abandon her on the street like a homeless person. Dad drew his arm back and proceeded to the front door, opening it wide. He instructed her to wait in her car while they figured things out. She began screaming about being his mother, but Dad simply pointed to the door. Grandmother went out, appearing smaller than I'd ever seen her, and we all gathered around the living room window to watch. She sat in her beat-up automobile, which was nothing like the luxury vehicle she used to drive with Uncle and Clara. Mom began pacing around the kitchen, running her hands through her hair repeatedly. She kept halting at the counter and then starting to walk again, as if she wasn't sure what to do. Dad followed her with his eyes, reminding her of how her grandmother had called her lazy and worthless when I was born. Mom's hands clenched, but she kept pacing, and I could tell she was warring with herself. Dad claimed grandmother preferred money over us, and only returned when the money was gone. Mom came to a halt and glanced at the ground, breathing heavily. I finally spoke up from where I was standing near the steps. I told them that our after-school program had 45 families that trusted us. What would happen if word got out that we let Dad's mother go homeless? Mom came to a halt and glanced at me, astonished. She admits to thinking the same thing about our reputation. Dad grabbed his phone and suggested they call Uncle first to see if he had changed his mind. Uncle answered the second call, and his voice was as frigid as ice when Dad narrated the issue. Uncle stated that his marriage with Clara had never been better since grandmother left. He was not going to sacrifice his wife's happiness for someone who simply cared about money. Dad turned it on speaker, and we heard Clara's voice in the background, wondering who it was. She took the phone and sprung a major surprise on us. Clara offered to pay for a motel stay for a few nights, but only through someone else. She would have no direct contact with her grandmother at all. She suggested that we hire a social worker to handle things, so there would be no family conflict. Dad thanked her and hung up, then walked outside to see grandmother still sitting in her car. We observed from the window as he leaned down to speak through her window. She began screaming loudly enough that we could hear it inside, but Dad interrupted her with sharp hand movements. He told her she couldn't remain here, but they'd work something out for tonight. Grandmother's face turned hot and she yelled something about desertion. Dad yelled back that she abandoned us first, literally as I was being born. He turned and walked back inside, leaving her sitting there, mouth open. Mom opened her laptop and began searching for a cheap motel in the vicinity. She discovered one approximately 10 minutes away that had good reviews and was reasonably priced. Dad called and booked a 3-night stay with Mom's credit card. He issued strong orders that no hotel charges should be added to the bill. The desk clerk looked perplexed, but consented to record it in their system. Dad went back outside and delivered the room key card to grandmother via the window. She accepted it without saying thank you, and drove away, mumbling something we couldn't hear. That night was tough for all of us. I kept tossing and turning, reflecting on all that had transpired. Around midnight, I heard Mom and Dad conversing quietly in their room down the hall. Mom kept telling us that we couldn't become like grandmothers by putting money and fame above family. Dad's voice was difficult to hear, but he sounded furious and exhausted. Mom explained that even toxic families were still family, and we needed to strike a balance. Their voices continued for at least an hour before quieting down. When I came down for breakfast the next morning, Mom had already been up making calls. She had the phone book open for government services and was taking notes on a yellow pad. After 3 transfers, she was connected to someone from County Social Services. The woman on the phone introduced herself as Marissa McCarthy and explained that she specialized in elder care resources. Mom addressed our position without delving into all of the unpleasant details. Marissa sounded understanding, saying that these family circumstances were more prevalent than people realized. She agreed to meet with us that afternoon to talk about housing help alternatives. Mom thanked her and hung up, clearly relieved to get some professional aid. Dad came down looking exhausted, with black circles under his eyes. He poured coffee and sat at the table, staring at nothing, while Mom told him about the social worker meeting. I took some cereal and noticed my parents appearing older than they had ever looked before. Around lunchtime, our neighbor sent Mom a text, causing her phone to ring on the counter. Mom snatched it up and her face paled as she read it. She gave Dad the message concerning grandmother's beat-up automobile that had been parked on our block since sunrise, with someone sleeping inside. Mom's hand began to shake, and she had to put the phone down before dropping it. Dad took his keys and walked to the door without saying anything. I observed from the window as he strolled down the street toward the aging vehicle parked 3 homes away. He banged on the glass, and grandmother sat up, puzzled and unkempt. They talked for a minute before Dad began swinging his arms about, agitated. He returned inside and slammed the door hard enough to rattle the portraits on the wall. Grandmother had not utilized any of the 3 motel nights we had purchased for, because she preferred to store them for when things went really terrible. Dad started pacing around the kitchen, claiming that this was exactly the type of manipulation she used. Mom told him that he could not force her to use the room if she did not want to. We still had to meet with Marissa that afternoon, so Mom cooked sandwiches that nobody ate. The drive to the county office felt longer than usual since everyone remained quiet. Marissa's office had posters on senior care and a large desk filled in documents. She explained that senior residences has waiting lists ranging from 6 months to a year long. The emergency shelters were overcrowded with persons suffering from mental illnesses, making it dangerous for older ladies. She took out a brochure for a rooming house on Maple Street that had an opening right now. The property required $800 for the deposit and first month, but it was tidy and had a manager on site. Dad's face turned scarlet as he heard the price, and he began to complain. Mom kept gazing at the photos of the modest rooms with shared bathrooms and a communal kitchen. Marissa stated that this was one of the best options accessible to someone in the grandmother's predicament. We thanked her and went with the pamphlet and a few benefit forms. That evening, Mom and Dad had their greatest dispute in years over what to do next. Dad insisted his mother made her decisions when she chose money over family 15 years ago. Mom was concerned about setting a bad example by allowing their family to become homeless. Their voices became more louder, till I couldn't take it anymore. Maybe Uncle would pay half if we asked him the right way, I whispered from the doorway. My parents both paused and glanced at me, as if they had forgotten I was at home. Dad contacted Uncle straight away, and put him on speaker so that we could all hear. Uncle listened to the entire event, and then went silent for a long period. He ultimately agreed to pay half, but only if the money went directly to the rooming house. Clara called and explained that Granny had to agree to remain away, except in extreme cases. She wanted everything in writing through Marissa to avoid any confusion later. Uncle explained that grandmother had already burnt out their goodwill, and this was the exact last thing they'd do. Marissa spent 2 days quietly working on the paperwork for the rooming home arrangement. Then, around 4:30 p.m. on Thursday, my phone began to fill up with texts from program participants. Grandmother had arrived during pickup time and was making a big deal in the parking lot. Mom and Dad rushed over, but I stayed at home, trying not to panic about what was occurring. When they arrived, grandmother was telling a group of parents about how her own family refused to help her. Several parents appeared to be uneasy, and one mother approached mom to inquire about her well-being. Dad had to forcibly lead grandmother out from the crowd, as everyone watched and muttered. Some of the students were staring, and I knew it would be all over the school tomorrow. That night, the phone rang 3 times, with parents inquiring about the situation at pickup. 2 families mentioned they were considering withdrawing their children if there was family strife influencing the curriculum. Mom spent an hour on each conversation, attempting to explain without disclosing too many personal details. The 3rd family was more sympathetic, but they still had reservations about the program's environmental impact. Dad looked discouraged as he listened to Mom's attempt to restore their reputation over the phone. The next morning, Mom was cooking coffee when the phone rang again before 7 a.m. Colin from the local paper presented himself and explained that he had heard of an incident at the after-school program. He asked if we wanted to make a statement about the incident with the elderly woman in the parking lot. Mom's face turned white, and she began stammering about needing to call him back later. Dad took the phone and almost began telling Colin everything about his grandmother's previous actions and why she deserved this. I went in between them and seized the phone before Dad said anything we'd regret. Our family is working through some challenges while maintaining healthy boundaries, I said with humor. He appeared pleased with it, and even highlighted his own mother-in-law, who caused similar troubles for his family. Mom relaxed slightly when Colin mentioned that he realized how complicated and personal family matters can be. He thanked us for the statement, and said he'd make a brief remark without going into depth. After he hung up, we all gathered in the kitchen, tired despite the fact that the day had only just begun. Marissa called an hour later, saying she had organized a meeting with everyone, including grandmother, for the afternoon. The purpose of the conference was to establish all of the rooming house's boundaries and expectations for the future. We arrived in the conference room at 2 o'clock and waited in uncomfortable silence. Grandmother arrived around 3:15, stating she got lost finding the building. Dad pointed out that she had lived in this town for 40 years, and the county building had not moved. Grandmother simply shrugged and sat down, without apologizing for wasting everyone's time waiting for her. Marissa took out a folder and began spreading papers across the table, as grandmother stared with narrowed eyes. The papers had numbers and lists, which caused grandmother to lean forward, despite her attempts to appear uninterested. Dad drummed his fingers on the table while Marissa sorted everything into neat piles. Mom sat with her hands folded, watching the grandmother's expression shift as she realized this was not going to be easy. Marissa cleared her throat and began discussing her alternatives, but her grandmother kept interrupting with comments about how difficult life had been. She raised Dad and Uncle alone after their father departed, which caused Dad's cheeks flush hot. He slammed his hand on the table, startling everyone, and reminded her how much her parents had helped her. Grandmother tried to disagree, but Dad insisted that she prioritized money over family, not the other way around. His voice grew louder as he recounted all the times she had chosen fortune over relationships. Marissa raised her hand to quiet things down before returning to explaining the many housing alternatives available. She showed Granny photos of a rooming house with an openness, shared bathrooms, and a communal kitchen. The property required 3 months' payment up ahead, which would provide Granny time to file for welfare and possibly find work. When Marissa discussed working, her grandmother's face twisted, and she began to yell about being too old for jobs. Marissa simply pointed to the second choice, a homeless shelter with bunk beds and no privacy at all. Grandmother went silent quickly after seeing those shelter photographs of people sleeping on cots lined up in rows. When Marissa's phone rang, she answered and put it on speaker without first asking anyone. Clara spoke clearly, stating that she had been listening to Marissa's updates all along. She offered to pay for the rooming house, but only if grandmother agreed to one additional non-negotiable condition. Grandmother had to attend weekly budgeting seminars at the senior center beginning immediately, with no exceptions. Grandmother's face turned from pale to blazing red as she realized Clara was in control of everything from behind the scenes. She opened her mouth to refuse, but then looked at the shelter photos again before closing it without saying anything. Marissa drew up the agreement right there, including all of the terms, as we all saw grandmother sign it with shaky hands. 3 days later, we traveled to the rooming house with the grandmother's belongings packed in rubbish bags and 2 old suitcases. The building appeared decent from the outside, but the inside smelled like cabbage and cleaning products mixed together. Grandmother moaned the entire way up the stairs about her hip and how loose the railing was. Her room was modest, with a single bed against one wall and an old dresser. She began complaining about the common bathroom down the hall and how the window faced a brick wall. Mom kept biting her lip, trying not to say anything, while Dad kept bringing suitcases up. He reminded his mother that Clara had given her a king-size bed, which she had chosen to leave behind. After a minute of silence, Grandmother began grumbling about the tiny mattress and rough sheets. We left her there unpacking and ranting about ungrateful children, while other residents observed from their entrances. The first week passed without touch, which seemed strange but also kind of calm for everyone. Then Dad's phone started ringing at work, and Grandmother called during his shifts to complain about everything. She complained about the food, the noise, the other residents, and the temperature of her room. After the 6th call in 2 days, his boss called him aside and warned him not to make personal calls during work hours. Dad arrived home stressed and snapping at everyone, which was not typical of him prior to this incident. With all of the turmoil, I started having difficulties focusing at school, and my grades dropped for the first time in my life. My counselor, Daniel Price, spotted me spacing out in class and invited me to remain after one day. He sat opposite from me and inquired about what was going on without pressing too hard for details. I told him about the family issue, and he helped me understand that adult problems were not my responsibility to solve. He taught me various stress reduction tactics, such as keeping a notebook and going for walks when things were overwhelming. He reminded me that I could not control what grown-ups did, but I could control how I reacted to it. Meanwhile, Grandmother was making trouble at the rooming house by grabbing extra food from the shared kitchen at night. Other tenants began complaining when their labeled groceries were missing, and tensions rose quickly. The manager called Marissa and informed her that Grandmother had been caught red-handed with someone else's yogurt and sandwich in her room. Marissa had to drive over and mediate, as Grandmother swore she had purchased those items herself, despite the fact that they bore someone else's name. The management warned that one more violation would result in eviction, and Grandmother would have to find another place to live. Officer Hayes arrived at our door on tenant night, 2 weeks after we moved in his patrol cruiser with Granny. She'd been discovered trying to sleep on a park bench after being tossed out of her rooming house for 3 days. Grandmother admitted, amid sobs, that another resident had accused her of stealing money from their room throughout the night. The rooming house had a zero-tolerance policy for stealing, so they'd forced her leave while they looked into what had happened. Officer Hayes stated he couldn't keep taking her to the park, so we needed to work something out quickly. Dad contacted Marissa even though it was late, and she began making calls to find out what had happened. The investigation revealed that Grandmother had not taken any money, but had been repeating sorrowful stories to other residents about her wealthy family abandoning her. She was attempting to solicit pity money from those who barely had anything, which resulted in the bogus accusation. The resident who accused her felt awful, but also upset about being duped into nearly giving Grandmother $20. The rooming house decided to allow her back, but they warned her not to manipulate other residents for money or food. Marissa had to explain to her grandmother that this was her final chance, and any further problems meant she'd be out permanently. Mom couldn't sleep that night, so we decided we needed to help without enabling Grandmother's conduct or overstepping our limits. She devised a plan to drop off goods once a week, subject to certain rules. Grandmother had to agree not to make any comments about our family or ask for anything other than what we brought. Mom wrote the guidelines and had Marissa deliver them so there would be no face-to-face confrontations. On the first delivery day, Mom packed basic goods such as bread and peanut butter and drove to the rooming home alone. She did not enter the room and instead left the bags with her grandmother's name on them at the front desk. Grandmother came down and accepted the luggage without saying anything, possibly the first time she had ever remained silent. Colin from the local paper contacted the following week to inquire about writing a feature on elder care and family boundaries. He had heard about our situation through the community grapevine and wanted to interview us on dealing with problematic family relationships. Mom and Dad agreed to talk, but only if he kept our identities anonymous in the story. Colin sat at our kitchen table for 3 hours, taking notes while Mom explained how we were trying to help without encouraging bad conduct. The piece was published on Sunday under the title, "When Love Means Setting Limits," and it utilized instances that anyone who knew us would recognize right away. My phone exploded with texts from students who realized it was about us. Instead of the judgment we expected, numerous parents from the after-school program contacted us with their own tales and resources. One mother dropped off a folder with senior services material she had gathered while dealing with her own mother-in-law. Another family volunteered to connect us with an elder law specialist. The response was overwhelming in the best way. That following week, Uncle contacted Dad around 2 a.m., crying so hard he could scarcely speak. He acknowledged to discreetly sending Grandmother money when she called, stating she was starving. Clara had discovered the bank withdrawals and chastised him for breaking their agreement. Uncle stated that grandmother had called him sobbing because the rooming house food was making her sick, and she hadn't eaten in 3 days. He had driven over with $200 cash without informing Clara. When Clara found out what had happened, she packed her bags and went to live with her sister. Uncle was devastated and urged Dad to speak to her. Dad drove to Clara's sister's place the next morning and discovered her sitting on the porch with red eyes. She was not upset about the money, but about the lying and going behind her back despite everything they had agreed on. It took Uncle showing up with flowers and a written commitment to never hide financial decisions again before she would consider returning home. They spent the next month in couples counseling, working with the trust difficulties that grandmother had caused between them. Meanwhile, Marissa had been working to enroll grandmother in the senior center food program. The center provided cooked lunches 5 days a week and maintained a food pantry on weekends. Grandmother qualified based on her salary and could eat for free. The first day, she arrived 40 minutes late, claiming she got lost, despite the fact that the center was 3 blocks from her rooming house. She sat at a table with 3 other women and quickly began telling them about how her wealthy sons abandoned her. One woman confronted her, claiming she'd heard Granny had family send off groceries every week. Grandmother adjusted her statement to claim that the groceries were primarily expired food that they did not desire. However, over the course of several weeks, she began to form friendships with a group that played cards after lunch. Marissa claimed that her grandmother showed up on a frequent basis, and even helped put up chairs on occasion. A month into my new schedule, I was doing homework when Dad's phone phoned with a number he did not know. The hospital called to report that grandmother had fallen at the rooming house and was treated for a damaged wrist and bruised ribs. The second resident stated that she had been reaching for something on a high shelf and lost her balance. Dad sat at the kitchen table for 20 minutes, staring at his phone, before choosing what to do. He phoned Mom at the after-school program, and they agreed to visit but with tight rules. They were only going to stay for 30 minutes, so I had to come in as a buffer. We discovered grandmother in a hospital bed, appearing smaller than I had ever seen her, with her wrist bound and an IV in her arm. She burst into tears the moment she saw us, telling us how afraid she had been and how none of the nurses would listen to her. Mom inquired with the nurses, who informed her that grandmother had requested a private room and refused the authorized pain medication in favor of something stronger. Dad firmly told her that we were there to make sure she was okay, but that we would not be taking her home with us. Grandmother tried to argue she couldn't return to the rooming house due to her injuries, but the doctor walked in and said she'd be okay with some physical treatment. Marissa worked with Medicare to have the therapy reimbursed, and she arranged for medical transportation to take grandmother to her sessions. The doctor also recommended a walker, which caused grandmother's face flush scarlet. She maintained she didn't need it, and that it would make her appear old. Dad actually chuckled at her, not mockingly, but genuinely amused that she was concerned about appearances despite living in a rooming house. The walker proved to be required because grandmother's balance was poorer than she realized. 3 families who had threatened to leave our after-school program following the scene made by grandmother decided to stay after hearing how we were addressing the situation. One mother took Mom aside and told her how her mother-in-law had lived with them for 2 years, nearly destroying her marriage. She stated witnessing us establish boundaries while also meeting grandmother's basic needs gave her hope that families might survive such situations. The program grew stronger as parents helped each other through tough family dynamics. Marissa enrolled grandmother in mandatory budgeting seminars at the senior center as part of her aid obligations. The grandmother moaned during the first session, but the instructor contacted later to say she had actually engaged and even helped another attendee figure out percentages. By the 3rd week, grandmother was arriving early and making friends with a man who was learning how to manage his Social Security benefits. 2 months into the arrangement, Officer Hayes knocked on our door, embarrassed. He had caught Granny digging through our garbage cans at 5 a.m., hunting for bottles to recycle. She informed him that we had thrown away precious recyclables and that she needed the money for medicine. Dad's face became white, as Officer Hayes stated that he needed to issue an official warning for trespassing. We walked outside to find grandmother seated in the patrol car, holding a garbage bag full of cans. Dad understood she was truly dealing with poverty for the first time after years of recklessly wasting other people's money. Officer Hayes recommended that if we wanted to help without encouraging trespassing, we placed our recycling directly in the rooming house bins. As the 3-month rooming house payment deadline approached, we scheduled a family gathering in a neutral place. Uncle and Clara arrived together, their first appearance since the money incident. We met in a downtown coffee shop where grandmother couldn't accidentally show up. Clara astonished everyone when she offered to continue paying for the rooming house if grandmother met certain requirements. She had to continue attending budgeting classes, stop defrauding other residents of money, and agree to monthly check-ins with Marissa. Uncle emphasized that any transgression will result in the immediate cessation of support. Dad suggested that we put everything in writing this time to prevent future misunderstandings. Something happened that neither of us expected. Grandmother's knees buckled, and she slumped on our doorstep, wailing more than I'd ever seen anyone cry. Not artificial tears as previously, but true body-shaking sobs that made her entire figure shake. She grasped the porch railing and hauled herself up to look at Dad, her face flushed and blotchy. "I'm scared," she exclaimed between gasps. "I've never had to worry about money before, and I don't know what to do." Dad's expression shifted somewhat, and his jaw unclenched slightly. Mom placed her hand on his arm, and they engaged in one of those silent chats that married couples have. Finally, Mom walked inside and returned with Marissa's business card. She handed it to Grandmother, explaining that Marissa might assist her in applying for senior housing and other perks. Grandmother accepted the card with trembling hands and murmured, "Thank you," which was perhaps the first sincere thank you she'd expressed in years. Over the next 2 weeks, Marissa and Grandmother worked together to complete applications for every senior living community in the county. The waiting lists were all 4 to 6 months lengthy, but the rooming house manager agreed to keep her on a month-to-month basis as long as the payments continued and she ceased causing problems for the other residents. Meanwhile at school, Daniel noticed I was difficult to concentrate and invited me to stay after class. He helped me get started on my college application essays, one of which was about how to set boundaries with toxic family members. He reviewed my first draft and informed me that my ability to manage such a difficult issue at my age demonstrated true maturity. I worked on that essay for weeks, writing about how my parents created something out of nothing, while my grandmother prioritized money over family. Daniel helped me modify it into something that reflected growth without seeming bitter. Around the same time, Granny began visiting the senior center more frequently. The organizer there required assistance in the thrift shop 2 days per week, simply sorting contributions and pricing stuff. It only paid a little stipend but gave Grandmother something to do other than moan. She still muttered that the labor was beneath her, but she arrived on time and completed the task. One afternoon, when I was assisting Mom at the after-school program, 5 new families arrived to register their children. One of the mothers approached Mom and said she had heard about how we handled the situation with my grandmother, maintaining boundaries while ensuring her basic needs were satisfied. She stated it motivated her to handle her own problematic mother-in-law in a healthier manner. Mom's eyes welled up and she had to take a brief break to use the restroom. After that, the program continued to grow, and we had to hire another part-time aide to keep up with all of the additional youngsters. Uncle contacted Dad more frequently, and they began meeting for coffee every week at the downtown cafe. They established a rule that they couldn't discuss Grandmother during these sessions, only catch up on work and life. Dad returned home after these meetings looking lighter, as if a weight he'd been carrying for years had finally been lifted. Uncle informed Dad that he and Clara had begun visiting a couples therapist to address the harm Grandmother's deception had caused in their marriage. Clara had forgiven him for giving Grandmother money behind her back, but they both wanted to make sure they communicated more effectively moving forward. The therapist assisted them in establishing new financial and family standards. 4 months passed with Grandmother residing at the rooming home, going to her thrift shop work, and participating in senior center events. Then Marissa called to say that Grandmother had been approved for a subsidized senior apartment. The rent would be based on her little Social Security payment, and she could move in the next week. Despite everything, we all came to assist her relocate. Dad rented a tiny truck. Uncle brought boxes, and Clara came to assist pack. Grandmother didn't thank anyone explicitly, but she also didn't complain. She merely quietly packed her few possessions and led us to load them into the truck. The senior housing building was rather lovely, with a community area and weekly programs. As we hauled boxes up to her second-floor home, I observed several occupants staring through their entrances. One woman about the grandmother's age introduced herself and explained that she too had a complex relationship with her children. Within a week, Grandmother and this woman were playing cards in the communal room every afternoon, grumbling about their respective families. Dad stated that it was probably therapeutic for everyone concerned. A few weeks after Grandmother moved in, the senior center coordinator called Marissa to offer her an opportunity. They required someone to assist with their lunch program, which entailed setting up tables and serving food 3 days each week. It was a legitimate paid position, not just a stipend, albeit still part-time. Grandmother reluctantly accepted the position, pretending as if she were doing them a favor. But Marissa later informed us she was one of their most dependable employees. She arrived early, remained late to assist with cleaning, and even began remembering the regular participants' names and dietary preferences. Marissa stated that in her 20 years of social work, this was some of the best improvement she has seen in a similar case. 6 months passed with Granny sticking to her regimen at the senior residence. She awoke at 7 a.m. every day to walk to the senior center for breakfast duties. She offered eggs and toast to the other residents 3 times a week. The organizer paid her every 2 weeks, and she spent the money on groceries and bus travel. She never apologized for calling me a disgrace when I was born. She never apologized for putting money before family, but she also stopped showing up at our home unexpectedly. She stopped contacting Dad's work phone during his shift. She stopped telling strangers sad stories about her ungrateful kids. Once the drama had subsided, Mom and Dad jumped back into the after-school program. They spent their weekends preparing the expansion they had been dreaming about for years. Colin remembered our tale and helped them apply for a community development award. They took 3 weeks to finish the application, which included all of the requisite papers and references. The award of $40,000 was approved 2 months later. They discovered an ideal spot on the north side of town, where no programs existed. Dad worked every weekend that summer refurbishing the facility with volunteer assistance. Mom interviewed and hired 2 more employees to assist with the increased enrollment. By September, 75 students had shown up at all 3 venues. Parents began describing it as the nicest thing that had ever happened to their area. The local news broadcast a piece in which children learned to change oil and solve algebra problems simultaneously. During my senior year, I concentrated on college applications, while everything else steadied. My grades were strong enough that several colleges expressed interest. The guidance counselor assisted me in applying for all available scholarships. In March, State University sent me an acceptance letter with a partial scholarship paying half of my tuition. Mom cried when she read it, and Dad grabbed me up and whirled me around the kitchen. 2 days later, a card addressed to me arrived without a return address. Inside there was a $5 bill and a note in wobbly handwriting expressing her pride. Dad laughed when he saw it, saying it was probably the first money she'd given someone in years. Mom carefully placed the card in my memory box. Anyway, Uncle called the following week with news that caused everyone to stop what they were doing. Clara was pregnant and due in the fall. They'd been trying for 2 years and were almost giving up hope. During the call, Uncle made it plain that grandmother's visits would be supervised only. No babysitting, no alone time with the infant, and no popping up unexpectedly. When they told grandmother at the senior center, she simply nodded without objecting. She realized she had little leverage to demand anything more. My graduation day came sooner than anyone imagined. The event took place in the high school football stadium on a beautiful June morning. Mom insisted on inviting the grandma, even though Dad believed it was unnecessary. She arrived 30 minutes early and secured a seat in the back row. She wore the same dress to every family occasion for the previous 6 months. When they announced my name, I noticed her sitting calmly. She did not cheer or wave like the other grandparents. She just watched, and then went without trying to attend our celebration supper. Mom later said that it was perhaps the best ending we could have hoped for. 2 weeks after graduation, the after-school program received a Community Excellence Award. The mayor presented the trophy during the ceremony, which took place at City Hall. Dad had to give a speech on their travels and the program's significance to the town. He thanked everyone who has helped them through difficult times without specifying any names. I sat in the 3rd row, watching him scan the audience. His gaze rested on grandmother, who was sitting in the rear in her customary location. Something shifted in his expression, and for the first time, I saw tranquility. He continued his speech by discussing how family may take numerous forms. The audience gave him a 3-minute standing ovation. Grandmother snuck out during the ovation, but not before I saw her wipe her eyes. She continued to live in her senior apartment while receiving benefits and working part-time. She attended holiday dinners when invited, but usually left before dessert. She visited Uncle's house once a month to see the baby, with Clara supervising every moment. She never held the infant without another person's hands nearby. She never complained about the constraints or attempted to push them. She wasn't the caring grandmother that children fantasize about. She wasn't even really pleasant most of the time. However, she was not the same destructive storm she had been previously. August arrived, and I began packing for college. My room looked weird, with half of my belongings in boxes and bags. That evening, we decided to swim in the pool one final time before I went. The water was wonderful, and the sunset turned everything golden. Dad floated on his back and stated that his mother was doing well at the senior center. Mom and I simply nodded, knowing that this untidy solution was the best we could get. Well, that's going to wrap it up for me today. It makes you stop and think about things, doesn't it? I appreciate you hanging out with me and walking through it all. At dinner, Mom boasted about my sister's 4-bedroom mansion, so I finally spoke. I make more than both of them combined. Silence fell. What followed was an ear-splitting stillness. Halfway to her mouth, my mom's fork halted. Perched dangerously on the tines was a slice of grilled salmon. My stepfather Richard finally looked up from his phone, and my sister Amelia's wine glass lingered on her lips. It was the first time he had done so all evening. It took me 3 years to finally say it. Over the course of 3 years, I endured subtle insults, passive-aggressive comments, and the stigma of being the family disappointment. Now I was having my moment, sitting at this pricey cafe that Mom had picked out because it was near Amelia's new house. I must digress, however, for the story does not begin with supper. I was 13 years old and Amelia was 15 when the pattern started. It wasn't until I was 33 years old that I was able to finally overcome it. Amelia had the best childhood ever. She possessed an air of natural charisma that grown-ups couldn't help but admire. She was 2 years older, athletically gifted, and academically gifted. I was the introvert who preferred to stay home and read than mingle with my friends. The relationship between my parents further worsened once my mother remarried Martin 2 years after our divorce, which occurred when I was 9 years old. From his first marriage, Martin inherited a daughter, but she and her mother lived in a different nation. His surrogate daughter, Amelia, became someone he could like and be proud of in no time. Well, I basically vanished into thin air. A full scholarship allowed Amelia to attend college. To help cover the costs of my community college education, I worked part-time in a bookshop. After finishing college, Amelia landed a well-paying marketing position. While I sought to define my life's purpose, I labored through a number of administrative and retail jobs. Daniel, Amelia's college sweetheart, was married in a grandiose ceremony that was mostly covered by Mom and Martin. Family dinner chats suggested that I was still single and focused on my profession, which they took as a sign that I couldn't maintain a relationship. The problem is, I wasn't having quite as much trouble as they anticipated. I was stealthily constructing my own life while Amelia had the idyllic existence everyone had imagined. I'd always had an innate talent for math and a firm grasp of how the financial markets worked. Before transitioning into financial consulting, I worked as a freelance bookkeeper for local companies. Even though I was making a respectable living, I chose to live frugally and not flaunt my prosperity. In the meanwhile, Amelia's picture-perfect life began to crumble. Daniel was more happy with his middle management job and weekend golf games than she had anticipated. He lacked ambition. Their marriage devolved into a string of pricey acquisitions and passive-aggressive social media posts meant to portray an unauthentic joy. To Mom and Martin, though, it was all irrelevant. The one with the spouse, the beautiful home, and the Instagram-worthy life was still Amelia, the successful one. At family reunions, they still had to find an excuse to explain myself because I was the one who let them down. 3 years ago, things finally broke down. Ethan, an amazing architect, and I had been in a committed relationship for the first time in years. I was truly happy after 9 months of being with him. At last, I hoped I'd have something that would change my family's perception of me. I took Ethan to celebrate Amelia's birthday with her. It was a major event. Everyone from her inner circle as well as our extended relatives showed up because she reserved a private room at a fancy restaurant. Despite my nerves, I couldn't wait to meet everyone and introduce Ethan. It was evident that Amelia had her sights set on him within the hour. She spoke over him, had him laugh a little too much, and used his arm as an excuse to make her point. I tried to jump in on their chat, but she always managed to change the subject to something I didn't understand, or bring up memories that only Daniel and I had. The most upsetting part was seeing the expression of joy on Ethan's face whenever she spoke to him. He would inevitably be captivated by Amelia's irresistible charm. She had always had that kind of charisma. She was chatting about an architecture project that her marketing agency was working on, and by the end of the night, he had exchanged business cards with her. After a fortnight, Ethan ended our relationship. He told me we wouldn't be a good fit in the long run, despite his admiration for my character, and that he couldn't see us being together. Some 3 months later, I came across pictures on Amelia's Instagram where she and Daniel were seated at a dining table with Ethan and his new fiancée. From what I can tell, that business link was the catalyst for their friendship. It was irrelevant that I was never told whether Amelia and Ethan had an illicit relationship. The fact that Amelia had appropriated something from me, and turned it into something about her, was what was important. My loved ones pretended like nothing had happened again. I got down to brass tacks then. I had had enough of attempting to get their respect or approval. Creating the life I want would take precedence, and I would not let anyone in on the secret if they failed to recognize my value. With renewed vigor, I dove headfirst into my task. I went into business for myself as a financial consultant, specializing in helping small and medium-sized companies, SMEs, that larger companies disregarded. For some reason I excelled at it. Helping business owners maximize earnings while reducing risks was my specialty, and I had a gift for identifying opportunities that others missed. I was generating more money in a year than I ever imagined imaginable. I out-earned Amelia and Daniel put together in just over 2 years. Just across town, I purchased a stunning home in a hip neighborhood. A renovated Craftsman from the 1930s with original hardwood flooring, a beautiful garden, and enough character to make design magazines green with envy, not a McMansion like Amelia's. Oh, and I also crossed paths with Samuel. Samuel again, but this one is very different from my stepfather. A pediatric surgeon, he had gentle eyes and a sharp wit. Pretending or making an impression on anyone was something he couldn't care less about. In his spare time, he volunteered at a clinic for low-income families while working long hours at the children's hospital. 6 months after we moved in together, he proposed. Our relationship lasted a year. The proposal was understated. On a peaceful Sunday morning, as we sipped our coffee in the garden and perused the newspaper, he asked me. It was a basic ring, yet it was gorgeous. After I confirmed his proposal, he kissed me passionately, like if I were his most prized possession. I was hesitant to immediately inform my family about our engagement. I was relishing in the joy, shielding it from their boundless criticism and lack of excitement. It was clear to Samuel. Protecting positive things from harmful family dynamics was second nature to him because of his upbringing by a narcissistic mother. Rather, I let my mind wander to the future I envisioned for myself. My husband Samuel and I chose to have a modest, close-knit wedding with only our closest friends and the relatives who were there to celebrate with us. An old inn with gardens that looked out over the lake was the perfect location we found. We worked with a florist, a photographer, and a caterer that focused on serving food straight from the farm. We also planned to host a housewarming party to celebrate the occasion. We didn't want to brag because we had worked so hard to create this lovely place and wanted to share it with those important to us. Our closest friends, Samuel's hospital co-workers, some of my business clients who became friends, and, most importantly, Samuel's family, wonderful people who welcomed me with open arms, were all invited. Not inviting Amelia, Richard or my mom was an intentional decision on my part. There was no animosity behind it. The primary motivation was safeguarding my happiness, while vengeance played a little role. They had spent decades lowering my self-esteem and making me feel unimportant. That kind of vibe wasn't going to be welcome in my lovely new house. A mystical celebration was held. On the back patio, we arranged tables and placed lights throughout the yard. I had a fantastic spread of food prepared with the help of Samuel's chef sister-in-law. Guests greeted our home with laughter and mingling. The parents of Samuel rounded me out to express their gratitude for the impact I had on their son. In her toast, my best friend Leah expressed her admiration for the life I had created. There were so many kind, supportive people there, and the atmosphere was perfect for a housewarming party. Seeing all those joyful faces brought a feeling of kinship that I had never had with my own family before. Eventually my mom found out, of course. Everyone knew each other in this little town, and there were even some friends who didn't know about the family conflict who posted about it online. Mom gave me a call around 1 month following the celebration. I could hear the hurt and uncertainty beneath her bland tone as she said, "Leah, I heard you had some kind of party at your house." "Yes," I responded plainly. "A housewarming party." "Oh." This was followed by a lengthy silence. "That sounds nice. I wish I'd known about it." "It was lovely," I responded, avoiding the underhandedness. "Here we go again. Well, maybe next time you could let us know. We would have loved to see your new place." My response was a simple, maybe, even though I and my companion were well aware that there would be no another opportunity. Until then, that was about all. Mom would mention wanting to see the house every once in a while, and I would respond with vagueness. Taking a different tack, Amelia asked me pointed questions about my new life and proposed that we all meet together for dinner soon. My deflection was courteous, but forceful. At the same time, my real life was going swimmingly. The expansion of my company was outpacing my ability to manage it. Samuel and I tied the knot in a beautiful little ceremony. There were members of his family, my best friend Leah, a handful of close friends, and a celebrant who had known Samuel from his youth. While on our honeymoon in Italy, we slept in quaint towns, indulged in delicious cuisine, and felt our love deepen with each passing day. Everyone, including ourselves, was amazed by how easily we adjusted to married life upon our return. I would consult with clients and grow my business from the comfort of my home office, while Samuel would wake up early to make rounds at the hospital. Every night after work, we'd get in the kitchen and catch up on each other's days. On weekends, we would tend to the garden, try out local eateries, or host friends for informal dinners. It was a life of peace and contentment. Additionally, I experienced an unprecedented sense of tranquility. However, my family couldn't stand the quiet for very long, as I was about to discover. A Tuesday afternoon was the time of the phone call. My phone rang as I was going over a new client's financial statements. I didn't want to let it go to voicemail when I saw Mom's name on the screen, so I answered. My mom's voice seemed noticeably louder than normal when she said, "Leah, honey, I have some exciting news." I was suddenly on high alert. "Oh, Amelia and Daniel bought a new house. It's absolutely gorgeous. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a gourmet kitchen, and a 3-car garage. It's in that new development on the north side of town, you know, where all the young professionals are moving." As she went into depth about the house, I made the right noises to indicate that I was listening. The description sounded just like the kind of mansion Amelia would pick. Grand, pricey, and built to impress rather than to accommodate everyday life. "Next month she's organizing a housewarming celebration," Mom went on to say. "The whole family's invited, of course. I'm so excited to see everyone together. It's been too long since we've all been in the same place." It wasn't subtle that the emphasis was on all. This was Mom's method of making sure I knew I was to be the responsible, encouraging younger sister. "That sounds pleasant," I remarked. "You'll come, won't you? Amelia specifically asked me to make sure you'd be there. She's so excited to show off the house." Without a doubt, she was. As the less accomplished sibling whose presence accentuated Amelia's achievements, I had always provided the ideal audience for her successes. "I'll have to check my schedule," I informed myself. "Oh, come on, Nora. It's family, whatever you have going on can wait." I was on the verge of laughing at how casually they disregarded my time and obligations. Even though my job was much more profitable than Amelia's, Mom still considered it a hobby that I could put aside whenever my family needed me. A resolute, "I will inform you," came out of my lips. "Well, don't wait too long. Amelia needs a headcount for catering." Long after the call ended, I remained seated in my office, gazing out onto the landscape that Samuel and I had collaborated on. A part of me considered just turning down the invitation and staying home. Still, I couldn't help but be intrigued. I was curious to see the house that had necessitated such a show. I was curious to witness whether Amelia and Daniel were truly happy or just acting it out. Perhaps I was curious to see how my loved ones would respond to the changed me. That evening, upon returning home from the hospital, Samuel discovered me standing there. His words, "You look thoughtful," were accompanied by a kiss on my head. He was informed about the invitation and the phone call by me. As usual, he listened without passing judgment. He then asked, "Do you want to go?" once I had finished. "I'm not sure. Part of me thinks it would be masochistic, but part of me is curious about the house, about whether they've changed at all, about whether they can see who I am now, or if they'll still treat me like the disappointing little sister who can't get her life together." For an instant, Samuel remained silent. "You know that their opinion of you doesn't change who you are, right? You've built an amazing life. You're successful, you're happy, you're loved. Whether they can see that or not is their problem, not yours." Saying, "I know," I continued, "but I spent so many years trying to earn their approval. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever be completely free of that. Maybe going would help you find out." Obviously, he was correct. The day after that, I contacted Mom to let her know that Samuel and I would be going. Everything about the housewarming party met my expectations. The mansion was massive and clinical, furnished with pricey pieces that gave the impression of having been handpicked by an interior designer rather than a loving family. Roughly 50 individuals showed up, and I didn't recognize the majority of them. Amelia extended an invitation to her co-workers, gym buddies, book club members, and a number of strangers who lived in her neighborhood. It was less of a party and more of a networking gathering. As usual, Amelia appeared stunning. She looked stunning in a designer gown that would have put most people's mortgage payments in the red, and her hair and cosmetics were also impeccable. Still, her smile was fragile, and her flitting from group to group to make sure everyone was gawking at her stunning house spoke of desperation. Daniel was regaling the crowd by the bar with tales of his college football heyday, just like he had done for years. He looked weak and defeated, and I couldn't help but feel sorry for him because of his weight increase and hair loss. playing the role of the jubilant parents and bragging about their daughter's achievements to anyone who would listen, was Richard and Mom, at their most comfortable. Without ever stating my name or occupation, they introduced Samuel and me to a handful of individuals as Amelia's sister and her husband. Samuel felt my hand tighten as soon as he realized. A soft whisper of, "How are you doing?" came from him. More pleasant than I had anticipated, I thought to myself. Rather of being upset, I felt disconnected while seeing this performance. I no longer cared about the characters in this story, and these individuals were complete strangers to me. I hated the house tour. As she guided groups of guests through the house, Amelia pointed out the pricey furnishings and elaborate details. The walk-in closet in the master bedroom was larger than the one in my previous apartment. The kitchen was equipped with all new, high-quality appliances. The 12-person table in the formal dining room seemed uninviting and chilly. We were briefly alone in the kitchen, and Amelia asked, "What do you think?" afterwards. "I must say, it's truly remarkable," I remarked in actuality. "I realize it's bigger than what you're used to," she continued, flashing that usual condescending smile. "But Daniel and I are planning for the future. We want to have kids, and we want them to have space to grow. It was obvious, my house was too cramped and unfit for somebody with lofty goals. That remark would have hurt more 3 years ago. Now all I could do was feel bad for her." She seemed taken aback by my tone, as she studied me intently as I said, "It's beautiful, Amelia. I hope you'll be very happy here," saying, "You seem different," she continued. "Do I?" More confident. "I guess it suits you." It was a compliment she'd never really offered me before, and I was truly moved. "I am grateful," I murmured. "I'm happy." She said, "Good." And for an instant it appeared as though she truly meant it. As for the remainder of the gathering, nothing went wrong. Even my parents, who were clearly amazed by Samuel's achievements and his evident dedication to me, were captivated by him. We departed early the following day, stating that he had an early procedure. As we made our way home, Samuel inquired, "Was it precisely what you were hoping for? Expensive, impressive, and devoid of any genuine character? And what are your thoughts on that?" I reflected on it, feeling a sense of relief. That life, the mansion, the ideal marriage, the acceptance of one's family, was something I used to aspire to. Despite the admiration it would receive from my family, I knew it would only bring me misery after viewing it in person. Particularly at that moment, because it would imply that I had to change into someone else to get something that ought to have been offered to me for free. Quietness enveloped us as we continued our journey home. Gratitude washed over me as I gazed at our house. Beautiful, humble, character-filled, as we pulled into our driveway. Home was here. That was sufficient. This was the pinnacle. For some reason, I assumed that was going to be all. By witnessing Amelia's new existence, I was able to affirm my desire for none of it, and demonstrate to myself that I had progressed beyond relying on my family's approval. Everything is resolved. However, it is not easy for families, particularly dysfunctional ones, to let go. The remarks began a few weeks subsequent to the celebration. In her inoffensive phone calls, Mom would drop hints about Amelia's impending house decorating or Daniel's plans to get a boat to complement his 3-car garage. Samuel and I were asked when we were planned to upgrade, and there were subtle jabs about my modest abode. Amelia began sharing more photos and videos on social media, chronicling her splurges and DIY endeavors. A redesign of the picture-perfect kitchen, new furnishings, and expert landscaping. Their ever-increasingly lavish and, to be honest, unaffordable lifestyle was on full display in every post. The source of the funds began to elude me. Although Amelia's marketing earnings were respectable, they were insufficient to cover such extravagant expenditure. Although not particularly remarkable, Daniel's pay was adequate. They appeared to be adding costs to their budget on a weekly basis, and the house alone must have put a strain on their budget. When Samuel and I encountered Daniel at the supermarket on a Saturday morning, it validated my concerns. He seemed anxious and exhausted. A strained smile spread across Daniel's face as Samuel spoke of the lovely new home. "Oh, it's fantastic," he exclaimed. "A little more than we bargained for financially speaking, but Amelia has her heart set on making it perfect." "These things have a way of working out," Samuel replied with an air of tact. "I hope so," he said. "Between us, the mortgage payments are significant. I'm considering taking a weekend job and picking up extra shifts at work." I felt a twinge of sorrow for him. I could tell that the pressure was taking a toll on Daniel, who wasn't exactly the most driven person on the planet, but was basically good at heart. "If you ever need any financial advice, I do consulting work. I might be able to help you figure out a budget that works," I remarked. A look of true appreciation spread across Daniel's face. I gave him my number and urged him to call me if he wanted to talk. He said, "Really? That would be amazing. Amelia keeps saying, we just need to make more money, but I think we might need to spend less instead." And so we exchanged numbers. Samuel shook his head as we drove home. "You realize Amelia's going to hate that, right? Her little sister helping her husband with money problems." "Probably," I responded. "But Daniel seems like he's drowning, and I can't just watch that happen. Even after everything, Daniel never did anything to me. His only crime was marrying my sister." He chuckled. "You're a better person than I am. I'd probably let him sink just to spite her." "No, you wouldn't. You would do what I'm doing because it's the right thing to do." He extended his hand and squeezed mine briefly. Daniel never contacted, saying, "This is why I love you." It didn't totally shock me. Either he independently decided against it, or Amelia discovered our communication and ended it. In any case, it was likely for the best. Financial counseling was just the latest drama in my already troubled extended family. The spending, however, and the social media posts detailing it, persisted. I couldn't tell who Amelia was competing with, but it seemed like she was. The posts started coming more often and with increasing detail. Videos showing her exercising in their new home gym, images of pricey meals and weekend retreats, and expertly set rooms. The situation reached a peak 6 months later when Mom called with news that was expected but nevertheless caught everyone off guard. "Nora, I need to tell you something, and I don't want you to hear it from someone else." I felt sick. This is how most talks begin, and trust me, they seldom end well. "What's wrong?" "Amelia and Daniel are getting divorced." My workplace chair gave apart under my weight. "What happened?" "I don't know all the details. Amelia says they grew apart, wanted different things. Daniel apparently wasn't supportive of her ambitions. That was Amelia's version anyway. I wonder what Daniel's side of the story would be." Saying, "I'm sorry to hear that," was my sincere intention. No matter how much I disliked Amelia, I never intended for her to be unhappy. "She's definitely struggling," Mom went on to say. "The house is too expensive for her to manage on her own, and Daniel's being difficult about the divorce settlement. She might have to sell." That was it. What the call was actually about. Saying, "That's tough," I began. "I was hoping, well, I know you're doing well financially now. Maybe you could help her out, just temporarily, until she gets back on her feet." I was taken aback by its audacity. They wanted me to help Amelia get out of the financial jam she got herself into after years of treating me like a failure, ignoring my achievements, and excluding me from family gatherings. "Mom, I know it's a lot to ask. But she's your sister, Nora. Family helps family. Close relatives support one another. When Amelia breezed through community college and I struggled, where was that philosophy? Where was it when I was getting patronizing comments about my decisions in life while working retail jobs? In all the 30 years that I had spent attempting to gain acceptance into this family, where had it gone?" I said, "I'll think about it," since I was not prepared to argue with her over the phone. "Thank you, sweetheart. I knew you'd understand. Amelia will be so relieved." I remained in my office for quite some time after the call ended, gazing at the financial documents scattered around my desk. I was excelling, above and beyond. There would be no noticeable effect on my finances if I helped Amelia. I wasn't asked if I could lend a hand, the question was, if I ought to. When Samuel returned home, he discovered me there, my gaze fixed on the papers. He then inquired, "Bad day?" He was informed about the phone call by me. I could feel his jaw clenching as I spoke, yet his attentive listening was unwavering. "Now that I've finished, I need to clarify this," he continued. "Your sister spent herself into debt trying to maintain a lifestyle she couldn't afford, is getting divorced partly because of the financial stress she created, and now your mother wants you to pay for her mistakes. That's about the size of it. And what did your mother say about all the times you could have used help? All the times Amelia got support that you didn't?" "Nothing, because that's different apparently." "Nora, you know I'll support whatever decision you make," Samuel said, taking a seat opposite from me. "But I have to ask, what do you think would happen if you said no?" "They'd be angry, disappointed. They'd probably stop speaking to me altogether. And would that be a loss?" The question was reasonable. In what ways might I be penalized? Infrequent phone conversations in which I was made to feel inferior. I received invitations to events where my presence was utterly neglected. Being a scapegoat for one's family is a luxury. I am unsure, I admitted truthfully. Part of me thinks it would be a relief, but they're still my family. Being related to someone doesn't give them the right to treat you badly, and it doesn't obligate you to enable their poor decisions. Obviously he was correct, but it's one thing to know something intellectually, and quite another to experience it emotionally. I mulled over the choice for several days afterward. My best friend Leah, who is always honest, was the one I spoke to. She asked, "Are you insane?" in response to my explanation of Mom's request. "These people have treated you like garbage for decades, and now they want you to pay for the privilege. Tell them to pound sand." Still, I couldn't help but reflect on Daniel, who appeared so frazzled and anxious while we were in the grocery store. Even though it was difficult, I couldn't help but feel bad for Amelia. No one is immune to the emotional toll that a divorce may take, even the ones who cause it. Ultimately, I gained clarity after speaking with Claire, Samuel's sister. Claire had a gift for sifting through people's feelings and getting to the core of issues. She was a family dynamics specialist therapist. "The question isn't whether you can afford to help," she stated one night over dinner. "The question is whether helping would actually be helpful." "What do you mean?" "If you bail Amelia out, what does she learn? That her choices don't have consequences? That she can always count on other people to fix her problems? Is that really helping her? Or is it just enabling her to continue making poor decisions? But if I don't help, she could lose her house. She could lose the house she bought with money she didn't have to impress people she doesn't even like. Would that really be the worst thing in the world?" Claire had a point. Assisting Amelia in evading the repercussions of her decisions would not impart any wisdom or influence her conduct. Putting it off would just make things worse when the time came for reckoning. A day later, I contacted Mom to inform her that I would not be providing Amelia with any funds. Intimacy, wrath, charges of self-centeredness, and betrayal were the typical responses. My mother sobbed as she expressed her disappointment in me. On the phone, Richard gave me a lecture about my responsibilities to my family. Even worse than before, Amelia herself called later in the week, and our chat her voice was heavy with emotion as she cried out, "I can't believe you would leave me in this state. I'm your sister Nora. How can you watch me lose everything and not care?" "I do care," I informed you. "But giving you money won't solve the real problem." "What real problem?" "The problem is that you're living beyond your means and have been for years. Giving you money now would just enable you to keep making the same mistakes." "So you're going to let me lose my house to teach me a lesson? What kind of person does that?" She abruptly ended our conversation, describing herself as the kind of person who's learned that sometimes love means saying no. What followed was a challenging few months. Unfortunately, Amelia did not win the house. Daniel would not continue making mortgage payments for a home he did not occupy, and she was unable to do so on her own. She had to sell most of her pricey furnishings since it wouldn't fit into her new, smaller apartment across town. Richard and Mom were upset with me. They cut me out of all future family get-togethers and made it plain that they blamed me for Amelia's problems. I didn't miss the irony. They had always rewarded me and Amelia for doing what was right for myself, and now I was being penalized for it. As the months went by though, an unforeseen event occurred. Amelia began to appear lighter without the burden of upholding her lavish lifestyle. Her posts on social media started to be less frequent but more authentic. She shared photos of herself reading, going for walks, and preparing meals in her tiny apartment kitchen rather than boasting about her luxury items. She switched to a smaller company that allowed her more flexibility in her schedule and lower pay. She began treatment in an effort to manage the emotional and financial fallout of her divorce. Max, an unkempt little mongrel she got from a shelter, was in nearly every photo she shared, and he always seemed so happy to be alive. I unexpectedly crossed paths with her at the downtown farmers market 6 months after the divorce was finalized. For the first time in years, she appeared truly delighted as she bought vegetables. "Nora," she murmured, her voice betraying just astonishment rather than wrath. "Hey Amelia, how are you doing?" She pointed to her basket overflowing with fresh fruit and vegetables and said, "Good, actually. Really good. I'm learning to cook. Turns out it's kind of therapeutic." "That's great. You look peaceful." Laughter escaped her lips. "That's not a word anyone's ever used to describe me before, but yeah, I think I am. Losing the house was awful at the time, but it forced me to figure out what I actually wanted instead of what I thought I was supposed to want." "And what do you want?" "Simplicity. I think a life that fits me instead of one that looks good from the outside." We continued our conversation for a short while longer, and it was the most sincere exchange we had experienced in a long time. They hugged as we said our goodbyes. I was really furious with you for not helping me, she admitted. While there wasn't an outright apology, I was surprised to receive more of an acknowledgement. But I think you were right. I needed to figure this out on my own. Mom called again 3 weeks ago with an invitation. I'm taking Amelia out for her birthday dinner, she informed me. We both realized it was an olive branch when she said, just a small celebration at that new place downtown. Would you like to join us? Now that the crisis had passed and I had been right to not enable Amelia's bad choices, Mom was prepared to welcome me back into the family. I will give it some thought, I replied. Please do. It would mean a lot to Amelia and to me. Ultimately, I made the decision to go. I wasn't so much looking forward to getting back into the family dynamic as I was intrigued to see how things had changed and, perhaps, to see if I could sit at that table and still maintain the boundaries I'd put so much effort into establishing. Last night, while enjoying a meal at that pricey cafe, Mom gushed over Amelia's housewarming celebration from the previous year. Your sister's housewarming party was absolutely delightful, Mom gushed as she sliced her fish. When are you going to catch up? I felt smacked in the face by the question. Mom just had to poke fun at me, even though we were supposed to be celebrating Amelia's birthday and a new chapter in her life. Despite all that had transpired, even after Amelia had admitted that her previous lifestyle couldn't continue, Mom continued to hold it up as an example for me to follow. At that moment, it hit me. Absolutely nothing had changed. Even if Mom would welcome me back to the table, I'll always be her failing daughter who couldn't keep up with her accomplished sister. It made little difference that Amelia's prosperity had been based on debt and delusion. Nobody paid attention to the fact that my life had become really solid and fulfilling. I realized I had finished apologizing when I looked at her sitting there with her fork raised, waiting for me to explain my smaller house, quieter life, and different choices. Last year, I hosted mine, I declared in a composed manner. Because you weren't invited, her fork froze in midair. There was a great stillness afterward. The wine glass meant for Amelia's lips came to a halt. Incredulous, Richard raised his head from his phone. It seemed like everyone in the restaurant could feel that something major had transpired. Many emotions passed across Mom's face, including perplexion, pain, wrath, and finally a wounded dignity. At long last, she spoke up. I don't understand. I bought a house 2 years ago. Samuel and I had a housewarming party last year. It was lovely. About 40 people, all of whom actually care about us. You weren't invited because you've spent the last 30 years making it clear that you don't care about my life unless it reflects well on you. Nora, Amelia whispered softly. Maybe we should. No, I replied, maintaining my gaze fixed on Mom. I'm tired of pretending this is a normal family dynamic. I'm tired of being treated like a consolation prize and then expected to be grateful for scraps of attention. A tear or two formed in Mom's eye. How can you say that? You're my daughter. I love you. Do you? Because love isn't just a feeling, Mom. It's actions. It's showing up. It's being proud of someone for who they are, not disappointed in them for who they're not. She mentioned, I am proud of you, but her voice didn't carry any significance. When have you ever been proud of me? When I graduated from college working 2 jobs, when I started my own business, when I got married to a wonderful man who loves me? Because I don't remember any celebrations for those things. The tears were freely flowing at this point. I didn't know you felt this way. That's because you never asked. You were too busy comparing me to Amelia and finding me lacking. Amelia, who was fixed on her plate, seemed to be going along with it since being the favorite made her feel special. I glanced across at her. When Amelia raised her eyes to gaze at me, I thought I saw shame. Nora, I refuse to hold you responsible for that, I went on to say. We were kids, and kids take love wherever they can get it. But we're adults now, and I'm done playing this game. Getting to my feet, I placed my napkin on the tabletop. I have a beautiful house with a husband who adores me, a successful business that I built myself. I have friends who value me, and a life that makes me happy. I don't need to catch up to anyone, because I'm not in a race. I withdrew the necessary funds from my wallet to pay for my supper plus a substantial gratuity. Saying, Happy birthday, Amelia, I continued. I genuinely hope you find what you're looking for. After that, I left. My family filed false CPS reports claiming I was mentally unfit to parent, but they didn't expect the social worker to expose their lies in court. I'm 26 weeks pregnant with my first child, and my entire family has turned on me over a baby name. This thing has grown so out of control that I need an outside viewpoint because I can't tell if I'm being unreasonable or if my family has gone insane. My name is Emily, and I am 25 years old. I am married to Ryan, a 28-year-old man. We've been together 4 years and married for 2. We were overjoyed when we found out we were expecting a girl. Ryan and I spent several weeks looking through baby name books and internet. We eventually opted on the name Sophia Grace. Sophia, because we both liked how traditional yet modern it sounded, and Grace, after Ryan's late aunt, who helped raise him when his parents separated. We announced the name to both of our families around a month ago, and that's when everything went awry. My mother, Margaret 60, has been concerned with family rituals since I can remember. She comes from a huge Irish Catholic family in which names are passed down through the centuries. When we told her about Sophia Grace, her expression changed completely. She waited for a few seconds before asking if we had considered calling the baby Eleanor after my grandmother, who died 3 years ago. I need to tell you something about my grandmother Eleanor. Everyone in our family speaks about her as if she were a saint. She lived to reach 85 years old and was supposed to be the matriarch who kept everyone together. However, Eleanor was not the wonderful grandma that everyone recalls. Eleanor babysat me and my younger brother, Liam, 22 male, when our parents were out on weekends or during school holidays from the time I was 7 years old until I was nearly 16. Eleanor had extremely strict expectations for how children should behave. If Liam or I made a noise while she was watching television, she would lock us in the basement pantry. This wasn't just for a few minutes. We'd occasionally spend hours down there. The pantry was dark and smelled like rotten veggies. There were no windows, and the door was very hefty. Liam was younger than me, so he cried, which irritated Eleanor even more when she finally let us out. During these babysitting sessions, Eleanor would frequently withhold food as punishment for what she considered rude behavior. If we asked for a snack before dinner, or didn't sit totally still during her soap operas, she'd send us to bed hungry. She would persuade our parents that we had eaten enough and were simply being greedy. Our parents have always believed her. The worst aspect was how Eleanor spoke to us while our parents were not present. She would call Liam stupid since he had difficulty reading when he was younger. She would tell me that I was becoming overweight, and that no boy would ever want to marry me if I continued to eat so much. These statements resonated with me for many years. Even now, I can hear her voice when I look in the mirror. When Eleanor got older and went to assisted living, our family would pay her visits every few weeks. Everyone would comment on how wonderful she was, and how much they missed having her around. I would sit there silently, knowing that if I mentioned how Mom treated Liam and me, no one would believe me. Eleanor had fostered the impression of being the ideal grandmother, baking cookies and knitting sweaters. After Eleanor died, my mother began to talk about her even more. She would talk about Eleanor being the center of our family and how she taught us all about respect and tradition. Last year, my mother got Eleanor's name tattooed in cursive on her wrist. Every holiday she publishes images of Eleanor on social media, captioned with how much she misses her counsel and wisdom. So, when my mother suggested naming my baby after Eleanor, I quickly declined. I mentioned that Ryan and I had already chosen Sophia Grace and were pleased with our decision. My mother's demeanor hardened, and she stated that it would be selfish of me not to honor Eleanor's memory. She stated that Eleanor would have preferred to have a great-granddaughter take on her name. Over the next few weeks, my mother repeatedly mentioned the name Eleanor. Every phone call, text message and visit came back to how I should reconsider my decision. She began emailing me old images of Eleanor with my relatives and anecdotes about how Eleanor helped her get through difficult times when I was a baby. My father, Charles, 56, originally stayed out of the discussion but eventually began to back my mother. He would talk about respecting our elders and keeping family links. He reminded me that Eleanor had given me some jewelry in her bequest, demonstrating how much she cared for me. What he didn't realize was that Eleanor only left me jewelry since she bequeathed comparable gifts to all of her granddaughters. It wasn't because we had a particular bond. The situation worsened 3 weeks ago at my baby shower. My mother had planned the entire celebration at our neighborhood community center. Around 32 individuals attended, including aunts, cousins, family, friends, and several of my co-workers. Everything was going great until my mother stood up to deliver a speech. She began by thanking everyone for arriving and expressing her excitement about being a grandmother. She then expressed her desire that everyone would join her in persuading me to consider a more conventional name for the baby. She stated that Eleanor had been a very significant part of our family, and that it would be wonderful to have her name go on via her great-granddaughter. I noticed folks looking at me expectantly. Some of my older relatives were nodding as my mother said. My cousin Julia, 31, remarked that Eleanor would have liked to hear that a new baby would have her name. I stepped up and stated unequivocally that the baby's name was Sophia Grace, and that Ryan and I would not change our views. My mother's smile vanished immediately. She accused me of being stubborn and unable to consider the feelings of others. She said that Eleanor had done so much for our family, and that this was a simple way to honor her memory. When I reaffirmed that our decision was definite, my mother's voice became stronger. She claimed that I was impolite and ungrateful. At this point, the entire room fell silent. My baby shower had evolved into a public argument over my grandmother's name. I saw folks looking uneasy and whispering to one another. I sat back down and attempted to divert the subject, but my mother had not finished. She said we'd talk about it later and hoped I'd calm down before the baby arrived. The rest of the baby shower seemed weird. People were nice, but it was clear that they were discussing what had transpired. Some of my relatives left sooner than expected, and some people approached me privately to say they understood my situation, but advised me to try to work things out with my mother. Since the baby shower, things have grown considerably worse. My mother contacts me several times a day to discuss the name dilemma. My father has begun to show up at my house when Ryan is at work to have lengthy discussions about family loyalty and traditions. My brother Liam has been texting me that I should simply give in, because fighting with our parents isn't worth the stress while pregnant. My Aunt Teresa, a 48-year-old woman, visited my office last week. She approached me during my lunch break and told me that my mother was distraught over the name dilemma. She explained that Eleanor had always shown her pride in me, and that using her name would help to keep her spirit alive in our family. When I told Teresa that I had terrible memories of Eleanor, she suggested I was probably misremembering things because I was young at the time. The most aggravating aspect is that none of my family members will listen when I try to explain why I don't want to use Eleanor's name. They either change the subject or suggest that I focus on pleasant memories rather than keeping grudges. My 32-year-old male cousin Nathan informed me that Eleanor belonged to a different generation and that I should not judge her by modern standards. Yesterday, my mother attended my doctor's appointment. She explained that she wanted to be there to hear the baby's heartbeat and had brought someone significant with her. When I walked into the waiting room, Eleanor's younger sister, Beatrice, 78, was sitting with my parents. Beatrice had drove 3 hours to attend this appointment. My mother added that she thought it would be meaningful for Beatrice to hear her great-great-niece's heartbeat, especially since the baby might be named Eleanor. Beatrice began discussing how Eleanor had always wanted more children, and how she would have loved to have a great-granddaughter named after her. When I repeated that the baby's name was Sophia Grace, Beatrice seemed perplexed. She stated that my mother had informed her that I was considering Eleanor as a name. My mother swiftly informed me that we were still discussing it and that I needed more time to think about it. I left the appointment without allowing anyone to hear the heartbeat. I drove directly home and called Ryan at work. When I informed him what had transpired, he suggested that we set stricter boundaries with my family. He suggested we draft a letter expressing our final choice and urging everyone to follow it. But I'm concerned that a letter will only make matters worse. My family has made it plain that this is more than just a disagreement over a baby's name. They regard it as a test of how much I respect our family's values and traditions. I know that if I continue to refuse, they will see it as me choosing to prioritize my own preferences over what they believe is appropriate. At the same time, I can't bring myself to name my kid after Eleanor. Every time I think about calling my baby that name, I recall being imprisoned in the basement pantry and being told that I was big and worthless. I don't want my kid to inherit the name of someone who caused me so much anguish, even if other people have fond memories of that person. I'm running out of time to tackle this issue. The kid is due in 12 weeks and my family's stress is just increasing. I'm not sure if I should stay hard on Sophia Grace and risk irreversibly destroying my ties with my parents and extended family, or if I should consider making a compromise that will make everyone pleased. Has anyone else experienced familial pressure on baby names? How did you handle it when your family insisted on honoring someone for whom you had no fond memories? I genuinely need assistance because this scenario is harming both my health and my marriage, and I'm not sure what to do next. Update 1. I mentioned 6 weeks ago that my family was urging me to name my daughter after my late grandmother Eleanor, who had mistreated me as a child. I replied I'd call her Sophia Grace instead. Many people advised me to stand steady, so I did. I wish I could say things turned out well, but they actually grew worse before they improved. I went into early labor at 35 weeks. 2 weeks after my previous post. Ryan hurried me to the hospital, where Sophia Grace was born healthy at 5 pounds 3 ounces. For the first day, everything seemed perfect. Ryan and I were fatigued but thrilled, and Sophia was doing well in the NICU as a precaution due to her early birth. On the second day, a nurse informed me that several individuals had called the hospital inquiring about me and the baby. My mother, father, Teresa, and cousin Julia all called me. They inquired about Sophia's health and visiting hours. I didn't contact any of them when I went into labor because I wanted to rest and bond with Sophia before dealing with family issues. That afternoon, my mother and father arrived at the hospital without warning. They had figured out which room I was in and walked right in as I was trying to breastfeed Sophia. My mother immediately ran to Sophia's bassinet and began taking shots of her with her phone. She was admiring and exclaiming how lovely her granddaughter Eleanor was. I corrected her, stating that the baby's name was Sophia Grace. My mother chuckled and said I'd come around once I realized how fitting the name Eleanor was for such a lovely baby. She stated that Sophia looked just like Eleanor in her infant photographs, and that this was clearly meant to be. My father stood beside the entrance, as if he were guarding it. He stated they were scared sick when they discovered I had given birth without telling them. He stated that family members should be the first to hear about these significant events, and that I had damaged their sentiments by excluding them. I requested them to leave because I was exhausted and still healing from the delivery. My mother explained that they had driven an hour to the hospital and deserved time with their granddaughter. She took Sophia up from her cradle without asking, and began wandering around the room with her. When I tried to reclaim Sophia, my mother told me I was being possessive and that grandparents had rights too. She stated that Eleanor would have wanted her to be engaged in raising her great-granddaughter, and that I couldn't keep Sophia away from family members who loved her. At this point, Ryan had returned from obtaining coffee in the cafeteria. When he noticed my mother holding Sophia and my father blocking the door, he instantly requested them to leave. He explained that we had requested privacy during our first few days as new parents, and that they should respect our desires. My mother claimed Ryan was turning me against my own family, and was the reason I was being so tough over the name issue. She claimed that if Ryan truly valued family traditions, he would encourage me to honor Eleanor's memory, rather than promoting his own family's names. Ryan snatched Sophia from my mother and instructed the nurse to contact security. He said that we had not invited them to the hospital, and that they were causing stress during what was supposed to be a tranquil period. My parents left, but not before my mother stated that this was not the end, and that they would find a way to maintain a contact with their granddaughter Eleanor, whether I liked it or not. The next day, Miss Patel, a social worker, visited my room. She explained that the hospital had received a call expressing concern about my mental health and capacity to care for Sophia. The caller said that I was suffering from postpartum depression and had paranoid ideas about my family members. Miss Patel added that she was mandated to perform a wellness check whenever the hospital received these types of calls. She questioned me about my support structure, my mental health history, and my plans for Sophia's care following discharge. She also inquired about my family relationships and whether I was experiencing any conflicts with relatives. I informed Miss Patel about the pressure I was receiving from my family regarding Sophia's name and how they had arrived at the hospital without authorization. I emphasized that I did not have postpartum depression, but was concerned about my family's behavior. Miss Patel stated that the person who contacted had supplied precise information about my alleged mental health difficulties. They claimed that I was refusing to let family members see the baby and making unreasonable judgments about the baby's care. They also claimed that my husband encouraged these habits while isolating me from those who cared about me. After speaking with me for approximately an hour, Miss Patel stated that she saw no signs of the difficulties highlighted during the phone chat. She described me as a capable new mother dealing with regular family stress. She stated in her report that no further intervention was required. 2 days later, Sophia and I were discharged from the hospital. Ryan had invited his sister Lauren, 31, to stay with us for the first week to help with cooking and cleaning. Lauren lives 4 hours away and took time off work to be there for us. On our third day home, my Aunt Teresa arrived at our door with my cousin Nathan and his wife, Rachel, a 27-year-old woman. They expressed concern for me and wanted to ensure that I was taking adequate care of Sophia. Teresa stated that my mother was concerned since I had not returned phone calls or responded to text messages. The fact was that Ryan and I had opted to switch off our phones for a few days to focus on getting used to life with a newborn. We were both fatigued and overwhelmed, and we didn't want to deal with family conflict as we learned how to care for Sophia. Teresa pushed by Ryan as he answered the door and entered our living room. She stated she needed to witness for herself that Sophia was healthy and well-fed. Nathan and Rachel followed her inside, despite Ryan's warning that this was not an appropriate moment for visitors. Lauren was in the kitchen preparing dinner when they arrived. Teresa immediately began grilling her about her identity and why she was in our home. When Lauren mentioned that she was Ryan's sister and was assisting us during our first week home, Teresa stated that family members, not strangers, should provide support. Teresa walked upstairs to our bedroom, where Sophia slept in her cradle. She awoke Sophia by lifting her up and inspecting her as if she were a doctor. She commented on Sophia's gaunt appearance and inquired as to when she had last eaten. Teresa expressed concern that Sophia's hour-long meal might not be sufficient for a developing infant. Nathan took images of our house with his phone, including Sophia's nursery, our kitchen, and our living area. When Ryan inquired why he was taking photos, Nathan explained that he wanted to preserve Sophia's living conditions in case there were any problems later regarding her care. Rachel began asking me extensive questions about my daily routine with Sophia. She wanted to know how frequently I fed her, how much I slept, and if I was taking any drugs. When I inquired why she required this information, she explained that my mother was concerned about my capacity to bear the demands of parenting. After they left, Ryan and I knew that this visit was more than just to check on us. They had been gathering information and documenting our household condition. Ryan summoned his sister Lauren and ordered her to jot down everything that had occurred throughout the visit, including the questions they had posed and the images Nathan had taken. That night, Ryan's phone rang at 2 a.m. Linda, his mother, is 58 and lives in another state. Linda stated that she received a bizarre phone call from someone pretending to be my mother. The caller said that I was suffering from severe postpartum depression, and that Ryan was encouraging my mental health issues. Linda stated that my mother had urged her to persuade Ryan to bring Sophia to live with my parents while I received appropriate treatment for my mental health concerns. My mother had expressed concern about Sophia's safety and provided papers indicating that I was incapable of caring for a newborn. Linda informed Ryan that the phone call made no sense because she had been messaging with both of us on a daily basis since Sophia's birth. She said we looked like normal new parents who were exhausted yet joyful. She had noticed no evidence of the severe mental health issues that my mother had stated. Ryan told his mother about what had happened with my family and the pressure on Sophia's name. Linda stated that she was surprised by my family's behavior and wanted to assist us in any way she could. She offered to come stay with us if we required further assistance. The next morning, we discovered that my mother had been calling Ryan's co-workers and my former co-workers. She had been informing folks that I was experiencing a mental health crisis and that we required help from friends and relatives. Several folks had contacted Ryan to see if there was anything they could do to aid us during this terrible time. Ryan contacted his HR department to say that someone was spreading misinformation about our family circumstances. His manager was understanding and stated that they would not take action based on the phone calls they had received. However, Ryan was concerned about how these calls might harm his professional reputation. I recognized my family was running a campaign to damage my legitimacy as a mother. They weren't only pestering me for Sophia's name anymore. They were aggressively attempting to persuade others that I was mentally unwell and unable of caring for my baby. Ryan and I decided we needed legal advice. We contacted Mr. Alvarez, a family law attorney who focuses on grandparents' rights disputes. We wanted to know what legal options my family could have, and how we might protect ourselves and Sophia from future harassment. Mr. Alvarez stated that grandparents' rights regulations differ by state, but in most situations, grandparents cannot get custody or visiting rights unless they can demonstrate that the parents are unfit, or that there are exceptional circumstances, such as the death of one parent. He stated that my family would require strong evidence of neglect or abuse to successfully challenge my parental rights. However, he warned us that fraudulent reports to social services may have serious consequences, even if they were proven unjustified. He suggested that we document any encounters with my family members, and keep track of their attempts to interfere with our parenting decisions. We decided to issue a cease and desist letter to my parents, Teresa, and cousin Nathan. The letter indicated that they were no longer welcome in our home without an invitation, and that they should refrain from contacting Ryan's family members, employers, and social services with false information about our family status. The letter also noted that we were willing to pursue a restraining order if the harassment persisted. Mr. Alvarez stated that having this letter on file would assist prove a pattern of inappropriate behavior if we needed to take additional legal action. 3 days after we sent the letter, my brother Liam called me. He added that our parents were distraught by the legal letter and that they believed I was punishing them for caring about me and Sophia. He said that they were just trying to help and that I was overreacting to their worry. Liam explained that our parents loved me and wanted to be a part of Sophia's life. He suggested that if I agreed to compromise on the name problem, everything would return to normal and we could be a happy family again. He proposed that I use Eleanor as Sophia's middle name, rather than Grace. I told Liam that it wasn't only about his name anymore. I mentioned how our parents had falsely reported my mental health and had been lying to everyone in our professional and personal lives about our family circumstances. I told them that their actions had crossed a line, and I couldn't trust them around Sophia. Liam stated that he was unaware of the phone calls to social services and Ryan's employment. He stated that our parents had informed him that they were just concerned about me and wanted to ensure that Sophia was properly cared for. He stated that he will speak with them about backing off and giving us space. However, the next day, my mother left a voicemail on our house phone. She said that the legal letter demonstrated that I was not thinking properly and that Ryan was influencing my judgments. She stated that Eleanor would be heartbroken to learn that her great-granddaughter was being kept away from family members who loved her. She stated that they would not give up on having a relationship with their granddaughter, Eleanor, and that they would find a way to ensure Sophia was aware of her family lineage, even if I was determined to exclude them from our lives. That message made it plain that mailing the legal letter had not resolved any issues. My family remained persuaded that they were the victims in this situation and that I was the one acting inappropriately. They were still calling Sophia the wrong name and devising methods to get into our lives. Ryan and I understood we would need more legal protection if we were to keep our family safe from the continued harassment. Update 2. My previous update was 3 months ago, when my family was bullying us for naming our daughter Sophia and circulating false information about my mental health. Things quickly escalated after that, and I feel compelled to share what occurred in the hopes that other people dealing with family legal concerns would find it useful. Sophia and I were at a routine pediatric checkup when my mother, father, and Aunt Teresa arrived in the waiting area. They had somehow learned about the appointment and decided to go without notifying us. My mother approached me and told me that she had been thinking about all that had transpired and wanted to apologize for any misconceptions. She stated that family was more important than arguments, and that she hoped we could resolve things for Sophia's sake. I was holding Sophia and trying to keep my voice down because we were in a public area with other families. I informed my mother that she could not just show up for medical appointments without authorization, and that we had requested time to straighten things out. My father stated that they had rights as grandparents and should be involved in key decisions regarding Sophia's health. He said that they have experience raising children, and that their advice could be beneficial to Sophia's well-being. Teresa was shooting shots of Sophia with her phone as my parents were speaking with me. When I urged her to stop, she explained that she wanted to capture Sophia's growth since they last saw her. She stated that my mother had been distraught at not being there to witness her granddaughter develop during these critical early months. The pediatrician's nurse called us back for our visit, and my family members attempted to follow us. I informed the nurse that only Ryan and I were Sophia's parents, and that the others had not been asked to the medical visit. The nurse stated that only parents could be present unless we provided written permission for others to attend. My mother thought this was ludicrous, and that grandparents should automatically be informed about their granddaughter's health. She stated that she had attended medical appointments for all of her other grandchildren, and that I was being harsh in excluding her. The nurse requested my mother to wait in the lobby and offered to speak with us after the appointment if we agreed. My mother claimed she would wait, but she appeared angry at being forced to go. During Sophia's exam, the doctor, Dr. Singh, inquired about any changes in our family situation from the last visit. I informed him about my family's unwelcome visit and the constant pressure we were facing regarding Sophia's name and their role in her care. Dr. Singh revealed that he had received a phone call the week before from someone claiming to be Sophia's grandma. The caller had in-depth concerns concerning Sophia's weight gain, feeding routine, and developmental milestones. She had also inquired whether there were any reservations about Sophia's parents' capacity to give adequate care. Dr. Singh stated that he did not offer any information during the phone call due to privacy restrictions, but that he did record the call in Sophia's medical record. He stated it was unusual for family members to call a pediatrician's office without the parents' knowledge or approval. He asked if we wanted him to add a note to Sophia's file, limiting who could receive information regarding her care. We agreed and requested him to ensure that only Ryan and I could obtain medical information on Sophia, or schedule appointments for her. When we left the appointment, my family was still waiting in the lobby. My mother inquired how Sophia was doing, and if she was meeting all of her developmental milestones. When I mentioned that the appointment went well, she requested particular information regarding Sophia's weight and height measures. I informed her that Sophia's medical information was private, and we were not comfortable sharing it with extended family members. My father claimed that the secrecy was indication that something was amiss, and that we were concealing issues with Sophia's health or development. Teresa stated that she had raised 5 children and could tell if Sophia was doing well simply by looking at her. She commented that Sophia appeared smaller than she should be for her age, and that we might not be feeding her properly. This conversation was taking place in front of other families with young children, and I could see them watching at us. Sophia started crying, most likely because she sensed the tension in the room. I tried to calm her down while my family discussed their concerns. My mother reached for Sophia and explained that she understood how to comfort babies because she had grandchildren. When I stepped back to prevent her from taking Sophia, she accused me of being anxious and overprotective. Ryan arrived at the pediatrician's office right as this dispute was taking place. He had been parking the car and was unaware that my family was present until he went into the foyer. When he realized what was going on, he immediately approached my family and requested them to leave us alone. My father claimed Ryan was the problem, and that he was turning me against my own kin. He stated that before Ryan entered the picture, I had always been respectful of family bonds and traditions. He said that Ryan's influence was forcing me to be selfish and ungrateful. Ryan stated that we had requested space, and that attending medical visits violated previously set boundaries. He stated that if they continued to harass us in public areas, we would have no choice but to contact law enforcement. My mother began crying, and expressed her want to be a part of her granddaughter's life. She claimed that she had been dreaming of being a grandma for years, and that I was depriving her the opportunity to develop a relationship with Sophia. Other folks in the waiting room were undoubtedly seeing the situation develop. A receptionist approached and inquired whether there was an issue that needed to be resolved. Ryan explained that we were going, and that the others were not with us. As we proceeded near the exit, Teresa announced that they knew where we lived, and were determined to have a relationship with Eleanor. Despite our numerous corrections, she continued to use Sophia's name as my grandmother's. That evening, Ryan and I called our lawyer, Mr. Alvarez, to tell him what had happened in the pediatrician's office. He stated that turning up for medical appointments may be deemed stalking or harassment, especially because we had already received a cease and desist letter. Mr. Alvarez stated that we have sufficient data to pursue a temporary restraining order. He stated that we would have to go to court and give evidence of the harassment, such as fraudulent referrals to social services, unannounced visits to our home and business, and the confrontation at the medical appointment. He stated that if the judge issued a temporary restraining order, my family members would be legally obligated to remain away from us, our home, Sophia's daycare, our workplaces, and all medical appointments. Violation of a restraining order will result in arrest and criminal penalties. 3 days later, we applied for a restraining order against my mother, father, and Aunt Teresa. The hearing was planned for the next week. Mr. Alvarez stated that my family members would be advised of the court date and might bring their own lawyer if they wished to contest our motion. The night before the hearing, my brother Liam called me. He stated that our parents had asked him to be a character witness at the court hearing. He explained that they wanted him to testify about how lovely our family had always been, and how much they adored Sophia. Liam expressed confusion regarding the legal situation because our parents had told him that we were being unreasonable. They claimed that all they wanted was a regular grandparent relationship with Sophia, and that we were using the legal system to punish them for caring too much. I told Liam everything that had transpired in the previous few months, including the fraudulent reports to social services, the harassment at Ryan's workplace, and the confrontation at Sophia's medical checkup. Liam stated that our parents had not told him about the majority of these instances. Liam stated that he did not want to take sides in a legal fight between me and my parents. He stated that he loved all of us and hoped that we could resolve our differences without the involvement of courts or attorneys. He chose not to attend the hearing as a witness for any party. Mr. Alvarez produced proof of my family's harassment at the restraining order hearing, including phone records, text messages, photos of unannounced visits, and documentation from the hospital social worker and pediatrician's office. He also heard voicemails recorded by my mother, who used Eleanor's name for Sophia, and threatened to find ways to force a relationship. My parents went to the hearing without a lawyer. When the judge asked if they wanted to respond to our request for a restraining order, my father explained that they were simply loving grandparents who were being kept apart from their granddaughter by their daughter's domineering husband. My mother expressed concern for Sophia's well-being, citing my postpartum depression and erratic decisions. She stated that they had only notified social services because they truly feared Sophia was not receiving adequate care. The judge examined all of the material and determined that the pattern of behavior alleged in our petition constituted unambiguous harassment. She stated that grandparents do not have the authority to impose connections with grandchildren or to meddle with their parents' medical and childcare decisions. The judge issued a 1-year restraining order against my mother, father, and Aunt Teresa. The injunction forbade them from contacting us directly or indirectly, visiting our homes or workplaces, attending Sophia's medical visits, or filing false reports with any government organizations. The judge also ordered my family to pay our legal bills since she determined that their behavior was intentionally disruptive and that they had ignored our earlier requests to respect our boundaries. Following the hearing, my mother approached me in the courthouse. A bailiff quickly intervened, reminding her that the restraining order was now in place, and that she should stay away from us. My father was debating with the bailiff over whether they may speak with us one more time to tell their side of the story. Mr. Alvarez escorted us out of the courthouse via a different exit to prevent more conflict. He stated that violations of restraining orders are taken severely by law enforcement, and that we should contact the police immediately if my family members attempted to make contact. 2 weeks after the restraining order was issued, we received a letter from another lawyer representing my parents. The letter noted that they were considering launching a lawsuit for grandparents' visitation rights and that they believed the restraining order was based on incorrect information. Mr. Alvarez wrote to their lawyer, stating that any attempt to seek for visitation rights while a restraining order was in issue would be considered harassment and could result in further legal ramifications. He further stated that our documentation of their actions would be useful evidence in any future legal procedures. Since then, we have had no direct touch with my parents or Aunt Teresa. Liam still contacts me on occasion, but he says our parents are upset that Sophia has been shut off from us. He claims that they spend the majority of their time discussing how unfair the court system is and how Ryan poisoned my mind against my own family. Sophia is already 6 months old and growing well. She is meeting all of her milestones and is a happy, healthy baby. Ryan and I have been able to focus on our new roles as parents without the continual burden of family harassment. The restraining order has 6 months left, and we intend to pursue an extension if there are any attempts to contact before it expires. Mr. Alvarez stated that the recorded history of harassment will make it simple to seek extra protection if necessary. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my previous update on the restraining order against my parents and Aunt Teresa. Sophia is now a year old, and I'd want to tell how everything was eventually handled after the issue took some unexpected turns. The restraining order was slated to expire in December, and Ryan and I intended to pursue an extension. We hadn't heard from my family since the court hearing, but Liam had stated that our parents were still discussing trying to see Sophia once the legal constraints lifted. Something happened in November that fundamentally altered the situation. Liam called and explained that he needed to tell me something crucial regarding our family. He explained that he had been digging through old boxes in our parents' basement to assist them arrange ahead of a planned move to a smaller house. Liam discovered a collection of papers and documents that belonged to our grandmother Eleanor. The box contained letters, diary entries, and medical data that our parents had retained following Eleanor's death. Liam stated that after reviewing these records, he now understands why I had such unpleasant memories of Eleanor. The documents were letters Eleanor had written to her sister Beatrice, complaining about having to babysit Liam and me. Eleanor regarded us as difficult and pampered youngsters who required strong discipline to learn good behavior. Eleanor had written comprehensive descriptions of the punishments she imposed, such as putting us in the basement and withholding food. She described these tactics as if they were common parenting techniques that our parents were too soft to employ themselves. She lamented that our parents had spoilt us and that someone needed to teach us respect. Liam also uncovered diary entries in which Eleanor expressed her hate for children in general. She said that babysitting was a hardship and that she despised having to spend her weekends dealing with ungrateful grandchildren. She described Liam and me in harsh terms, claiming that we were proof that modern parents had no idea how to raise children correctly. The most frightening records were Eleanor's notes on her contacts with the other grandchildren in our extended family. She had filed identical accusations against my cousins and mentioned employing the same punishing measures on them. Liam learned Eleanor had been systematically mistreating several children for many years. Liam stated that after reading these articles, he felt uncomfortable about how our family depicted Eleanor as a caring grandmother. He stated that the evidence plainly demonstrated that Eleanor had been abusive, and that our parents were either unaware of it or decided to overlook it. Liam presented these documents to our parents and confronted them about Eleanor's actions. According to Liam, our mother originally attempted to defend Eleanor by claiming that the letters and diary entries had been taken out of context. She stated that Eleanor was from a different generation and that her punishment tactics were typical for the time. Our father was very upset by what Liam had discovered. He stated that he believed Eleanor was overly severe with us, but he trusted our mother's judgment in leaving us with her. He stated that if he had known about Eleanor's punishments, he would not have permitted her to babysit us. Liam stated that our parents argued for several days about the documents and their implications for our family status. Our mother was unwilling to confess that Eleanor had done anything wrong since it would imply that her entire campaign to have Sophia named after Eleanor was based on honoring an abusive individual. Our father eventually stated that they needed to face the reality about Eleanor, and that they owed me an apology for pressing me to use her name. He remarked that if Eleanor had treated Liam and me as depicted in the documents, my refusal to honor her memory made perfect sense. 2 weeks later, Liam called to say our parents wanted to meet with Ryan and me to discuss the problem. He stated that they were prepared to accept that they had been mistaken about Eleanor, and that they wanted to apologize for all that had occurred over the previous year. Liam stated that our parents understood why we had received a restraining order, and that they did not intend to challenge the legal limits. He stated that they only wanted a chance to convey what they had uncovered and see if there was any prospect of restoring our connection. Ryan and I discussed whether we should agree to meet with our parents. We were both doubtful that a single talk could repair all of the harm to our family relationships. We were also apprehensive that this could be another manipulation attempt to gain access to Sophia. We agreed to meet with our parents in a neutral venue, with our lawyer Mr. Alvarez present. We agreed to meet at his office so that we may have legal recourse if the conversation went wrong. Liam decided to attend the meeting as a mediator to assist everyone stay focused on resolving the concerns. At the meeting, our parents brought copies of the documents Liam discovered in Eleanor's folders. Our mother was visibly uncomfortable, but she conceded that the evidence showed Eleanor had mistreated Liam and me. She claimed that she idealized her recollections of Eleanor, and did not want to consider that her mother may have been violent. Our father apologized for his involvement in the pressure campaign over Sophia's name. He claimed that he had trusted our mother's judgment about Eleanor without personally checking the case. He explained that if he had listened to my concerns about Eleanor from the start, the entire problem may have been averted. Our mother's apology was more difficult for her to deliver. She explained that she had been so concentrated on upholding family customs, that she had rejected my love for Eleanor. She claimed that discovering the records forced her to face the reality that her mother had harmed her grandchildren, and failed to protect us. She also apologized for filing false reports with social services and harassing Ryan's family and our employer. She stated that she had convinced herself that we were making horrible judgments about Sophia's care, but that she now realizes she was attempting to control our parenting choices because she could not accept that we were independent adults. Mr. Alvarez inquired about our parents' expectations from this meeting and the improvements they were willing to make going ahead. Our father explained that they realized we might never want to have a close relationship with them again, but they hoped we would consider allowing supervised visits with Sophia in the future. Our mother stated that she wished to support our decision regarding Sophia's name and would stop referring to her as Eleanor. She stated she understood why the name was upsetting to me, and that she should have listened when I initially expressed my concerns about my grandma. Ryan asked our parents what they were going to do about Aunt Teresa, who had been one of the most aggressive participants in the harassing campaign. Our father explained that Teresa had been acting on information from our mother, and that they would convey the current situation to her. Our mother predicted that Teresa would struggle to accept the truth about Eleanor because she had idealized her recollections of our grandma. She stated that they would inform Teresa that any further harassment of our family will harm her relationship with them as well. Liam suggested we take a cautious approach to restoring family bonds. He suggested that our parents send cards or letters to Sophia on holidays and birthdays, without expecting an immediate reaction from us. He stated that if they can consistently respect our boundaries over time, we may consider allowing limited interaction in the future. Ryan and I agreed that we needed time to consider whether we wanted to repair connections with our parents. We stated that the restraining order would stay in effect until it expired, and that any future contact would have to adhere to tight rules that we would set. We also suggested that our parents make apologies with other family members who had been impacted by the campaign to pressure us concerning Sophia's name. When our parents asked them to pick sides in the battle, several of our relatives found themselves in uncomfortable situations. Our mother decided to contact Ryan's mother, Linda, and apologize for spreading incorrect information about my mental health. She stated that she would explain that her concerns were founded on wrong assumptions and that she apologized for bringing stress to Ryan's family. The discussion concluded with our parents agreeing to respect the remainder of the restraining order and to wait for us to contact them if we decided to try to repair our relationship. Mr. Alvarez stated that he would prepare a written agreement describing what had been discussed so that everyone understood the expectations moving ahead. Following the meeting, Ryan and I spent several weeks debating whether we should give our parents another chance. We both felt that their apologies were genuine, and that discovering the truth about Eleanor had been a watershed moment for them. We agreed to allow restricted communications until the restraining order expired. We agreed that our parents could send Sophia birthday and holiday cards and call us briefly once a month. We stated that any future in-person visits would have to be scheduled in advance and would be initially overseen by Liam. When the restraining order expired in December, our parents sent Sophia a Christmas card with a simple message, wishing her well and expressing their intention to be a part of her life someday. They offered a small gift, but did not request a response, or want to visit her. We've spoken with our parents on the phone several times in the last several months. The calls have been courteous but awkward as we all try to find out how to engage after what transpired. Our parents inquire about Sophia's progress and provide updates on their own lives, but they avoid discussing old problems. We led our parents to see Sophia for the first time since her birth in March. The visit lasted 2 hours and was held in Liam's residence, with him serving as a supervisor. Our parents were visibly frightened and excited to see Sophia, but they adhered to all of the boundaries we had established, including not taking photos and not interfering with our parental decisions. Sophia is now 15 months old, walking and beginning to utter words. She was shy around our parents during the visit, which was understandable given that she had never met them before. Our parents remained patient and did not try to push interactions with her. Our relationship with our parents remains very restricted and fragile. We are starting cautiously because we do not want Sophia to be exposed to family drama if our parents resume their prior domineering behavior. The trust that was shattered during the name conflict will take years to recover, if at all. Teresa has not taken part in any of the reconciliation initiatives. According to Liam, she was really unhappy when our parents informed her of the documents they discovered concerning Eleanor. She accused our parents of violating Eleanor's memory, and she refused to accept Eleanor's mistreatment of her grandchildren. Teresa has evidently told other extended family members that our parents are lying about Eleanor to satisfy us, and that the entire family is disintegrating because people no longer respect their elders. Liam stated that Teresa's reaction has helped our parents comprehend how they were thinking about family loyalty before learning the truth about Eleanor. Looking back on the scenario, I believe the most essential lesson is that family traditions and bonds should not be sacrificed at the expense of safeguarding children from harm. My parents were so committed to upholding their romanticized image of Eleanor that they were willing to disregard my abuse allegations and punish me when I refused to honor her memory. The legal system eventually safeguarded Sophia and our family from further harassment. However, it needed tangible evidence of Eleanor's violent behavior for my parents to recognize that my views about her were justified. I wish they had listened to me from the start, rather than demanding proof that my grandmother had documented her own cruelty of children. Sophia will grow up knowing her grandparents, but their connection will be different than if the disagreement had not occurred. My parents will have to earn their position in her life, rather than assuming instant respect because of their familial status. The greatest positive effect is that this circumstance has strengthened my bond with Ryan and demonstrated that we can successfully safeguard our family when necessary. We learned to set boundaries, seek legal assistance when necessary, and prioritize our child's well-being over family unity. Sophia's full name is Sophia Grace, and that's what everyone calls her now. She will never have to bear the name of someone who harmed her mother, and she will grow up in a family that values her safety and well-being over traditions that are harmful. My stepniece's lie almost destroyed my marriage. 3 days later, she admitted she lied to impress her friends at school. So I banned her forever. I, a 27-year-old female, need to discuss what happened at my family reunion last month because I am still processing how rapidly things came apart. My husband, Leander, is 33 years old, and we have been married for 4 years. We live in a little house about 25 minutes from my parents and the majority of my extended relatives. My sister Beatrix, 34, married John, 39, 2 years ago. John welcomed his 17-year-old daughter, Sabine, from his previous marriage into our family. Sabine's biological mother resides in another state and sees her around twice a year. When John and Beatrix got together, the entire family made a big effort to welcome Sabine. My parents invited her to every holiday. My mother bought her birthday and graduation gifts. I included her in our cousin group chats and ensured she had someone to talk to at family gatherings. Sabine appeared to appreciate these attempts at first. She would hug my parents goodbye and express her gratitude for dinner. She assisted my mother in the kitchen during the holidays. During family gatherings, she and my younger cousins would play board games together. John expressed gratitude for how we embraced his daughter. He told Beatrix several times how fortunate he felt to marry into such a warm family. Dorian, my 16-year-old male cousin, is Beatrix's son from her first marriage. He and Sabine attended the same high school and appeared to get along well. Dorian is quiet, yet he has always remained close to our family. He spends every other weekend at my parents' house and considers it his second home. Last month, we threw my father's birthday party at our place. About 17 family members gathered for an afternoon cookout. Leander spent the majority of the day cooking on our backyard patio and playing catch with the younger kids. Sabine sat at our kitchen table with her phone throughout the majority of the gathering. She spoke out when someone addressed her directly, but otherwise kept to herself. Our home has 2 bathrooms. The main bathroom is located down the hallway from the living room. Our master bathroom connects to our bedroom. During parties, guests always use the hall bathroom because the main bedroom is off limits. Leander and I keep our bedroom door closed during gatherings. The party ran smoothly. Sabine ate dinner with everyone and thanked them before leaving with Beatrix and John. Leander and I cleaned up afterward and discussed how lovely it was to have everyone over. There was nothing odd or disturbing about the day. 3 days later, Dorian arrived at our front door about 5 p.m. He appeared pale and shifted his weight from foot to foot. He asked if he might come inside and talk. I carried him into the living room and offered him a drink. Dorian sat on the edge of the couch, staring at his hands. He stated he had heard something at school and needed to tell me about it. He stated that some of Sabine's friends were discussing what happened at our party. According to what Dorian heard, Sabine told her friends that Leander entered the bathroom when she was using it. She stated that he purposefully exposed himself to her. I sat there for a bit, trying to understand what Dorian had just said. The claim was so ludicrous that my initial reaction was perplexity rather than outrage. I asked Dorian to repeat exactly what he had heard. He claimed Sabine informed her friends that she was in the bathroom when Leander entered the door without knocking. She claims he lingered there for a few seconds before apologizing and departing. Her story's logistics were confusing. Guests used the hall bathroom all day, which has a lock on the inside. Leander spent virtually the whole party outside, grilling meals and overseeing the children in the backyard. He came inside to replenish drinks or get more food from the kitchen. He never went down the hall to the restrooms. I called Leander just after Dorian left. His reaction was complete shock. He asked me to repeat what Dorian had said twice because he couldn't believe somebody would fabricate such a serious claim. We spent an hour going over every detail of the party, attempting to figure out when this alleged incident would have occurred. There was no period of time when Leander was missing and may have been near the bathroom. I called my parents that evening and asked them to meet Beatrix, John and Sabine the next day. I did not convey the reason over the phone because I wanted to handle it in person with everyone present. My parents agreed to host the conference in their home. The following afternoon, we convened in my folks' living room. Sabine sat on the couch, between Beatrix and John. She was nervous and kept staring at the door, as if she wanted to escape. My parents sat in their normal recliners, while Leander and I took the love seat across from Sabine. I looked Sabine in the eyes and told her that Dorian had told her an intriguing narrative about what she had been telling her school buddies. I requested her to tell the story for everyone in the room. Sabine's face turned scarlet, and she began stammering about not understanding what I meant. I explained that, according to her account of events, Leander had walked in on her in our bathroom and exposed himself. The room became utterly silent. Beatrix's mouth dropped open. John gazed back and forth between Sabine and me, as if he were solving a conundrum. Sabine began crying and stated that she never intended for anyone to take it seriously. She claimed that her friends at school were often discussing inappropriate encounters with older males, and she felt excluded from their chats. She admitted that she made up the tale to fit in with what her pals were saying. She explained that she destroyed my husband's reputation in order to appear more mature and experienced to her young buddies. She explained that she chose Leander because he was the most recent adult man she had been around. She claimed she did not believe the news would spread beyond her small group. I stepped up from the love seat and glanced at Sabine, who was crying into her hands. I informed her she was lying, and that her actions could have cost an innocent guy his life. I stated that false allegations such as hers put men in prison and damage families. I informed her she had jeopardized my husband's job and our future together merely to please her pals. I turned to Beatrix and John and told them that Leander and I would never be in the same room with Sabine again. I stated that this was not a punishment that will stop after a few months or years. I informed them that Sabine was forever barred from our home, and any events we hosted or attended. John began to mention something about Sabine being a teenager who made a mistake. I interrupted him and stated that 16-year-olds understood the difference between truth and falsehoods. I stated that someone who can fabricate sexual assault charges cannot be trusted near my family. Beatrix attempted to argue that Sabine had confessed and apologized. I informed Beatrix that an apology cannot restore the harm caused by sharing false information about sexual assault. I told Sabine that she had displayed her true character, and we would not give her another chance to injure us. My parents listened throughout the whole chat without saying much. After I finished speaking, my father informed John and Beatrix that Sabine was no longer allowed in family gatherings held at their home. He refused to have someone in their home who would lie about such vital topics. The conference finished with John, Beatrix and Sabine leaving in tears. Leander and I drove home silently. The next day, Beatrix called to inform me that Sabine would be returning to live with her birth mother in another state. She explained that John had determined that the situation was too harmful to their marital and family stability. Dorian has been staying with us for the past 3 weeks while Beatrix and John work out their living arrangements. He claimed Sabine's pals at school discovered she had lied about everything. After the truth was out, most of them stopped speaking with her. I understand that some people may believe I reacted too aggressively to a teenager's deception, but false charges of sexual assault are not pranks or misunderstandings. They ruin lives and reputations. Sabine understood exactly what she was doing when she shared that story. She made a deliberate choice to compromise my husband's reputation for her own social standing. Leander and I are moving on with our lives. We intend to start a family next year and buy a larger house. We have the support of my parents and Dorian, who witnessed Sabine's cruelty. Our marriage withstood this test because we confronted it together and refused to allow a lie separate us. Update 1. I had several messages requesting an update, so here is what has happened since my first post. Sabine returned to her mother's home in Oregon 2 days after our family meeting. John drove her there and stayed with her for a week to help her adjust. Beatrix stayed at home with Dorian throughout that period. When John returned, he was fatigued and appeared to have aged several years. The first week following Sabine's departure was quiet. Beatrix avoided phoning me, and John did not attend family dinner at my parents' place on Sundays, as he usually did. Dorian stayed with us during this time and looked relieved to be away from the situation. Beatrix then called to tell me some news that changed everything. She stated John had been calling Sabine every night since she relocated to Oregon. During one of these calls, Sabine admitted that lying about Leander was not her first false claim. According to Beatrix, Sabine admitted to John that she had made similar allegations about a teacher at her previous school in Oregon. That claim had led to Sabine's decision to live with John and Beatrix in the first place. Sabine's mother had taken her out of that school and sent her to live with John since the situation had gotten too difficult. John had never been informed the true reason Sabine came to live with them. Sabine's mother had simply stated that Sabine required a change of atmosphere and would benefit from living with her father. John assumed it was usual adolescent rebellion or adjustment challenges following his divorce. When John called Sabine's mother to check this information, she stated that Sabine had accused a male teacher of inappropriate behavior. The school investigated and found no evidence to back up Sabine's assertions. Other pupils contradicted her account of events. The teacher was cleared of any wrongdoing, but the accusation caused enough drama that Sabine's mother chose to take her abroad. Beatrix claimed John was saddened to learn Sabine had a history of making false claims. He recognized that our family's decision to cut ties with Sabine was absolutely justified. He also understood why Sabine's mother had agreed so quickly to take her back permanently. This realization completely transformed John's worldview. Instead of seeing Sabine as a confused adolescent who made a single poor decision, he regarded her as someone with a major problem that could harm innocent people. He admitted to Beatrix that he felt bad for not protecting our family better. The revelations concerning Sabine's past also clarified several previously unclear details. John stated that Sabine's mother was especially keen to have Sabine live with him permanently. At the time, John assumed it was because Sabine's mother wanted to focus on her new romance. Now he knew Sabine's mother was probably happy that Sabine was no longer her burden. Dorian wasn't surprised when Beatrix informed him about Sabine's earlier claims. He claimed Sabine had always been dramatic and attention-seeking in school. He claimed that she would exaggerate her life stories to make them more intriguing. He stated that some of his friends found her statements difficult to believe, but they didn't want to brand her a liar outright. John decided to minimize his interaction with Sabine after learning about her history of false charges. He still sends her money and calls her once a week, but he no longer plans to visit her or bring her home for holidays. He informed Beatrix that he needed to prioritize his marriage and Dorian's safety. This decision caused disagreement between John and Sabine's mother. Sabine's mother called Beatrix to complain that John abandoned his daughter when she needed help. Beatrix recounted the matter to Sabine's mother, telling her that John had never been informed of Sabine's earlier charges. Sabine's mother reacted defensive, claiming the instructor event was a misunderstanding. Beatrix asked Sabine's mother why she hadn't told John about Sabine's proclivity for making false allegations. Sabine's mother expressed her optimism that the behavior was merely a phase that Sabine would outgrow. She admits that she should have been more open with John before sending Sabine to live with him. Beatrix's conversation with Sabine's mother got heated. Sabine's mother accused our family of being unkind and nasty to a disturbed kid. Beatrix retorted that Sabine's lies may have ended Leander's career and our marriage. Both women were upset as they hung up the phone. Dorian has thrived since Sabine departed. He grins more and appears more relaxed in the house. He informed Beatrix that he had been walking on eggshells around Sabine since he had no idea what would set her off. He said Sabine would become upset with him for minor infractions and threatened to inform John that Dorian had been cruel to her. John and Beatrix have been attending couples counseling to deal with the effects of this event on their marriage. John feels bad about bringing Sabine into our home without knowing her complete history. Beatrix is frustrated that she has defended Sabine for so long without knowing the truth. The counselor has helped John understand how to keep a relationship with Sabine while also safeguarding his marriage and stepson. John now understands that being a father does not entail condoning toxic conduct or sacrificing other relationships. My parents have been quite supportive throughout this scenario. My father informed John that he appreciates his decision to prioritize his marriage and Dorian's well-being. My mother stated that she hopes Sabine receives therapy for her difficulties, but she stands by her decision to keep Sabine apart from our family. Leander and I have been working on our own plans and ambitions. We submitted an offer on a house with 3 bedrooms and a larger backyard. Leander was promoted at work, which will allow us to afford the new mortgage. We're looking forward to beginning over in a new place. The situation has brought our extended family closer together. Dorian spends more time with my parents now that Sabine isn't around to cause problems. John has gotten more involved in family activities and appears more calm. Beatrix and I have started getting coffee together once a week to catch up without talking about Sabine. Several people have questioned if I feel sorry for Sabine and whether I intend to give her another chance in the future. The answer is no. Sabine's history of false charges demonstrates that this was not a one-time error made by a bewildered adolescent. She has a history of telling big lies to manipulate circumstances and gain attention. I'm glad the truth came out before Sabine could make further claims against other innocent people. Our family is stronger and more calm without her. Update 2. I'm here with another update since Sabine's position has taken some unforeseen turns, which I believe everybody following this narrative should be aware of. About a month ago I received a call from Megan, who introduced herself as the mother of one of Sabine's former acquaintances. Megan revealed that her daughter, Maris, was friends with Sabine at their Oregon school before she moved home with John and Beatrix. Megan explained that Maris had been following social media posts from Sabine's current acquaintances and heard about what transpired through a fake charge against Leander. Maris informed her mother that Sabine had made similar allegations about other persons while living in Oregon, including the teacher incident that Beatrix had described. According to Maris, Sabine also accused a male student at their Oregon school of inappropriate behavior during a school dance. Maris stated that Sabine claimed this kid had cornered her in an empty classroom and made inappropriate advances. The school also investigated this accusation, which turned out to be incorrect. Multiple witnesses reported seeing Sabine with the accused student in separate locations around the time Sabine said the event occurred. Maris told her mother that Sabine seemed to relish the attention and commotion around her charges. Maris stated that Sabine would become thrilled when discussing these situations and would add additional details each time she related the stories. Maris later stopped being friends with Sabine after realizing she was lying about these interactions. Megan phoned because she was frightened Sabine might make similar charges against others in other areas. She stated that Maris felt awful for not speaking up sooner about Sabine's tendency of lying. Megan wanted to make sure our family understood that Sabine's actions in our community was not an isolated incident. This chat reinforced our suspicions about Sabine's character, but it was troubling to realize that her false allegations had harmed numerous innocent people in various schools and towns. I informed Beatrix and John. John was dismayed to find that Sabine's troubles were considerably more serious than he had imagined. He stated that he felt he knew nothing about his own daughter. Beatrix expressed gratitude that we had been strong in our choice to terminate relations with Sabine. 2 weeks following Megan's call, John got a call from Sabine's school counselor in Oregon. According to the counselor, Sabine had been trying to establish friends and had been caught spreading tales about her classmates. The counselor inquired if John was aware of Sabine's history of making false charges, since the school intended to address this pattern of behavior. John was open with the counselor about what had transpired in our family and what he had discovered regarding Sabine's past claims. The counselor stated that the school will work with Sabine's mother to build a plan to handle Sabine's conduct, but John should be aware that Sabine may need to change schools again. John told Beatrix that he was overwhelmed by Sabine's troubles. He claimed he attempted to be a good father by providing financial support and remaining in touch, but he didn't know how to assist someone who continued to lie and manipulate circumstances. The counselor that John and Beatrix had been seeing suggested that John establish clear boundaries with Sabine on appropriate behavior. The counselor indicated that enabling Sabine's falsehoods and manipulation would not benefit her in the long run. John chose to speak directly with Sabine about the repercussions of her behavior. During their next phone call, John informed Sabine that he was aware of her history of false charges dating back to her time in Oregon. He stated that he loved her but could no longer support her if she continued to lie about innocent people. He told Sabine she needed to accept responsibility for her actions and stop fabricating stories for attention. Sabine became enraged during the meeting, accusing John of prioritizing his new family over his biological daughter. She said that everyone was out to get her, and no one realized how difficult her life had been. John stayed calm, telling Sabine that many individuals face difficult circumstances without resorting to false allegations and manipulation. Sabine hung up on John during the chat. She did not return his calls for the next 2 weeks. When John finally spoke with Sabine's mother, he discovered that Sabine had informed her mother that John had been nasty and unsupportive during their previous conversation. Sabine's mother originally believed Sabine's account of events and contacted John to complain. John told Sabine's mother exactly what he said during the phone discussion with Sabine. He told Sabine's mother that he was trying to make her grasp the significant repercussions of her actions. Sabine's mother eventually acknowledged that Sabine was experiencing similar troubles at her new school in Oregon. Sabine's mother said she didn't know how to deal with Sabine's actions. She claimed Sabine would cry and play the victim if confronted with her lies. Sabine's mother asked John if he had any ideas for getting Sabine aid. John recommended that Sabine's mother seek professional therapy for Sabine's tendency of lying and manipulation. He stated that Sabine needed to understand that her actions had serious ramifications for innocent people. Sabine's mother agreed to look into counseling possibilities, although she expressed concern about the cost. Dorian has been doing well since Sabine left. His grades have improved, and he's become more gregarious with his pals. He joined the school basketball team and now spends weekends with his teammates. Beatrix described Dorian as a different person without Sabine's incessant drama and manipulation in the house. Dorian informed Beatrix last week that several of his school friends had asked him about Sabine and why she had left so abruptly. Dorian stated that he informed his pals that Sabine had been spreading stories about family members and that his parents had decided it was best for her to live elsewhere. Dorian stated that his pals understood and did not seek any clarification. John has been doing better since he established boundaries with Sabine. He continues to provide her financial support on a monthly basis, but he no longer feels bad about his lack of closeness with her. The counselor helped John see that protecting innocent people from Sabine's lies was more vital than keeping a relationship based on condoning bad behavior. Throughout this ordeal, Beatrix and I have grown closer together. She has been open about how tough it was to accept Sabine's manipulation and danger. Beatrix stated that she had hoped Sabine would change and become a better person, but she now realizes that Sabine's issues are too significant to ignore or overlook. Leander and I closed on our new home last week. We are thrilled to have additional space and a fresh start. We invited my parents, Beatrix, John, and Dorian to supper this weekend to celebrate. It will be our first family gathering since the event with Sabine, and we are excited to spend time together without worrying about drama or false allegations. The entire event has taught our family the value of safeguarding innocent individuals from those who will lie and manipulate for personal gain. We discovered that sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is create hard boundaries with those who refuse to modify their damaging conduct. Update 3. This is my final update on the Sabine situation. Several people have messaged me inquiring how things turned out, so I wanted to bring some closure to this story. Sabine's mother called John around 6 weeks ago, informing him that Sabine had been expelled from her Oregon school. According to the school administration, Sabine made yet another false accusation, this time against a male substitute teacher. Sabine alleged that the substitute teacher made improper remarks to her during the study hall time. The school extensively researched Sabine's accusations. They examined security camera footage from the classroom and hallway, interviewed other students who attended the study hall, and spoke with the substitute teacher. The investigation proved that Sabine's accusation was entirely baseless. The security tape revealed that Sabine and the substitute instructor had little interaction, and other students confirmed that nothing untoward had occurred. The school principal informed Sabine's mother that this was the last occurrence that they would accept. Sabine had already been placed on probation for spreading rumors about her peers and causing disruptions in class. The bogus charge against the replacement instructor was the final straw. Sabine was expelled immediately and barred from returning to any school in the district. Sabine's mother was compelled to enroll her in an online education program since no other local institutions would accept a student dismissed for false claims. Sabine's mother informed John that she was overwhelmed and didn't know how to deal with Sabine's conduct anymore. John felt sad for Sabine's mother, but he kept his boundaries. He assured Sabine's mother that he would continue to send financial assistance for Sabine's basic necessities, but he would not get involved in resolving issues caused by Sabine's own activities. Sabine, according to John, must face the natural consequences of her actions. Sabine made her first straight call to John in months 2 weeks after being evicted. Sabine was in tears, and expressed her desire to return to live with John and Beatrix. She pledged that she had learned her lesson, and would never lie again. She stated that living with her mother was making her depressed, and that she missed being a member of John's family. John listened to Sabine's plea but stood steadfast on his choice. He informed Sabine that she had violated trust with too many people, and that her history of false allegations made it impossible for her to return. John emphasized that he needed to safeguard his marriage, stepson, and the rest of the family from future harm. Sabine grew enraged when John refused to let her move back. She accused John of abandoning her and putting strangers before his own kid. John reminded Sabine that Beatrix and Dorian were not strangers, and that Sabine had imposed these consequences on herself by her actions. Sabine threatened to inform others that John was an unfit father who did not care about his daughter's well-being. John gently informed Sabine that he had documented her habit of false charges, and that anyone who investigated would quickly discover the truth about why Sabine was not living with him. Sabine ended the call by hanging up on John. She hasn't phoned him since then, but John continues to provide monthly financial support to Sabine's mother to cover Sabine's expenditures. Dorian graduated from high school last month with honors. He got accepted to 3 institutions and chose to attend a state university about 2 hours away from home. John and Beatrix are pleased of Dorian's accomplishments and grateful that he was able to concentrate on his academics despite Sabine's incessant drama. Several family members commented at Dorian's graduation party on how much happier and more relaxed everyone seemed without Sabine. Dorian informed John that when Sabine lived there, he was frightened to invite guests over because he never knew what type of scene she would create. John and Beatrix completed their relationship counseling satisfactorily. This event has helped to strengthen their marriage. John stated that he acquired vital lessons about the significance of understanding a person's entire past before bringing them into the family. Beatrix stated that she learned to follow her intuition when someone's behavior does not appear appropriate. My parents have insisted that Sabine is not welcome at family events. My father had no misgivings about his decision, especially after knowing about Sabine's ongoing practice of false charges. My mother expressed sympathy for Sabine, but believes that safeguarding innocent family members is more essential than encouraging toxic behavior. Leander gained another promotion at work and is now in management. We have adjusted into our new home and are expecting our first child this fall. We're delighted to become parents and relieved that we won't have to worry about exposing our child to Sabine's harmful conduct. Last month, I ran into Megan, Sabine's mother, who had contacted me about her history in Oregon. Megan told me that Sabine's expulsion from school had made headlines in their tiny village. Megan reported that most parents were pleased Sabine was no longer near their children. Megan also noted that her daughter, Maris, who had been friends with Sabine, was doing much better since they cut ties. Maris had been experiencing worry and self-doubt during her connection with Sabine because Sabine would manipulate situations and drive Maris to question her own impressions of events. The entire incident has taught our family the importance of protecting ourselves from those who lie and manipulate others for personal benefit. We discovered that giving someone many chances to improve is ineffective if they are unable to accept responsibility for their behavior. Some may say we were too severe in our treatment of Sabine, but I feel we made the correct decision. Sabine's persistent pattern of false charges demonstrates that she has not learnt the consequences of her actions. Maintaining a connection with someone who refuses to change would have endangered innocent people. Our family is happier, more serene, and stronger than before. We put our energy into relationships with people who are honest and trustworthy. We don't waste time attempting to fix those who do not want to be fixed. John continues to provide Sabine financial support on a monthly basis because he feels parents have a responsibility to help their children meet their fundamental necessities. However, he has recognized that he cannot have a relationship with Sabine while she continues to lie and manipulate situations. I appreciate everyone who followed our tale and offered support during a difficult period. Accepting that you cannot save everyone, especially those who refuse to be saved, can be the most difficult aspect of protecting your family. Sabine made her decisions, and now she is dealing with the consequences. Our family made our own decisions, and we are enjoying the calm and happiness that comes from being surrounded by honest, loving individuals.